these ancient stories bring you the deepest rest your soul has been craving. Tonight, whether you're listening from the quiet mountains of Colorado, the bustling heart of London, the peaceful countryside of New Zealand, or anywhere else in this beautiful world, you've arrived at the perfect moment. Let your eyes close gently now. Allow your breath to soften and slow, and permit these timeless Buddhist tales to carry you into the most peaceful sleep you've experienced in a very long time. Before we begin our journey together, there's something important you should understand. The stories you're about to hear aren't merely entertainment to pass the time. They're ancient keys, carefully preserved across centuries by monks and masters who discovered profound truths about the nature of mind, the release of suffering, and the discovery of genuine peace. Each story has been tested by time, passed down through generations, whispered in meditation halls, and shared beside flickering temple candles because they contain something essential, something that speaks directly to the deepest parts of who we are. Tonight we'll walk together through moonlit temples and quiet monasteries, sit beside wise teachers who've unlocked secrets about letting go, and witness ordinary people transformed by extraordinary moments of insight. These aren't my stories to claim. They belong to all of us, woven into the fabric of Buddhist teaching, preserved because they illuminate the path to freedom in ways that lectures and philosophy never could. So, settle deeply into your bed now, adjust your pillow one final time, and release everything that happened today, like autumn leaves falling from branches. What occurred earlier no longer requires your attention. What might unfold tomorrow can wait until tomorrow arrives. Right now, in this sacred moment, there is only your breathing, only this comfortable darkness, only these gentle words guiding you home to the peace that's always been waiting inside you. Our journey begins in a small temple nestled in the mountains of ancient Japan, during a time when the country was transforming rapidly, when old ways were colliding with new ideas, when seekers traveled great distances to sit at the feet of masters who embodied wisdom. The temple was called Shorinji, the Temple of Pine Forest, and it had stood in that mountain valley for 300 years, its curved roof tiles weathered smooth by countless seasons, its wooden floors polished to a soft glow by generations of monks, walking the same paths in meditation, century after century after century. In this temple lived a master named Nansen, a man whose reputation for cutting through illusion had spread throughout the region. Students came from distant provinces to study with him, drawn by stories of his unconventional teaching methods, his ability to shatter comfortable assumptions, his way of pointing directly at truth without decorating it with philosophy or pretty words. Nansen was 70 years old, his face deeply lined, his movements slow but purposeful, his eyes sharp and clear despite his age. He'd been teaching for 40 years, and in that time, he'd watched hundreds of students arrive full of concepts and questions and desperate seeking, and he'd helped many of them discover what they'd been searching for had been present all along. One autumn afternoon, a visitor arrived at the temple gates. He was a professor from the newly established Imperial University, a man named Tanaka, who'd spent his entire adult life studying philosophy and religion, accumulating knowledge, building an impressive career on his understanding of Buddhist texts and teachings. He came dressed in Western clothing, carrying books and papers, his mind full of questions he wanted to ask this famous Zen master, theories he wanted to discuss, interpretations he wanted to validate. The temple attendant led Professor Tanaka to Nansen's quarters, a simple room with tatami mats on the floor, a small alcove with a hanging scroll, a view of the garden through paper screens. Nansen was sitting quietly when they entered, and he gestured for the professor to sit across from him. Without any formal greeting, without asking why the professor had come, Nansen began preparing tea. He moved slowly, deliberately, his old hands steady as he heated water, measured tea leaves, arranged cups with meticulous care. Professor Tanaka watched this ritual with barely concealed impatience. He hadn't traveled all this way to watch an old man make tea. He had important questions to ask, scholarly debates to engage in, understanding to seek. But politeness demanded he wait, so he sat and watched and mentally rehearsed the questions he would ask once this unnecessary ceremony was complete. Finally, Nansen lifted the teapot and began to pour. The hot liquid flowed into the professor's cup, steam rising in delicate wisps. The cup filled to the brim, and still Nansen continued pouring. Tea spilled over the edge, pooling on the wooden tray, dripping onto the floor. Professor Tanaka watched in confusion, then alarm, then finally couldn't contain himself any longer. "Master, stop. The cup is full. No more will go in. You're wasting the tea." Nansen set down the teapot and looked at the professor with those clear, penetrating eyes. "Like this cup," he said quietly, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations, your own theories and interpretations, your own ideas about what Zen is and what truth looks like. How can I show you anything when there is no room in you to receive it? Unless you first empty your cup, how can I pour anything new into it?" The words hung in the air between them, like the call of a temple bell. Professor Tanaka opened his mouth to respond, to defend himself, to explain that his knowledge was valuable, that his years of study had prepared him for this meeting. But the words died before they reached his lips, because in that moment, seeing the tea spilled everywhere, hearing the master's simple statement, something shifted inside him. He saw himself clearly for the first time in years, a man so full of concepts about reality that he'd lost touch with reality itself, so busy studying the menu that he'd forgotten to taste the meal, so caught up in maps and descriptions that he'd stopped actually traveling. His shoulders dropped, his breathing deepened, and tears gathered in his eyes, though he couldn't have said exactly why. "Master," he whispered, "please teach me how to empty my cup." Nansen smiled, a warm expression that transformed his weathered face. "You've already begun. The moment you recognize your cup is full, you've taken the first step toward emptying it. Now let's clean up this mess together, and then we'll have tea properly." They spent the next hour on their hands and knees, wiping up spilled tea, cleaning the wooden tray, preparing fresh tea with careful attention. And in that simple shared activity, Professor Tanaka learned more about Zen than he'd learned in 20 years of academic study. He learned that wisdom wasn't something you acquired through accumulating knowledge. It was something that revealed itself when you stopped filling yourself with concepts and allowed space for direct experience. He learned that the master's teaching had already begun the moment he'd started overflowing that cup, creating a living metaphor that bypassed intellectual understanding and spoke directly to the heart. Professor Tanaka stayed at the temple for 3 months, longer than he'd planned, longer than his university position could easily accommodate. But something had awakened in him that autumn afternoon, something that made his previous life of lectures and papers and academic debates seem hollow, like eating pictures of food instead of actual nourishment. Each day, he rose before dawn with the monks, sat in meditation in the cold hall, worked in the garden pulling weeds and harvesting vegetables, ate simple meals in silence, listened to Nansen's brief talks that were more like arrows shot directly into the heart than philosophical discourses. During his stay, Tanaka witnessed Nansen work with many other students, each one receiving exactly what they needed, though rarely what they expected. There was a young monk named Daisuke who'd been at the temple for 5 years, practicing with fierce intensity, sitting in meditation until his legs screamed with pain, studying sutras until his eyes burned, convinced that enlightenment would come through sheer force of will and effort. Nansen would watch him with amusement and occasionally offer gentle corrections that Daisuke rarely understood. One morning, Daisuke was assigned to work in the kitchen preparing the noon meal. He was resentful of this assignment because it took time away from what he considered real practice, sitting meditation and sutra study. He worked quickly and carelessly, chopping vegetables with aggressive strokes, his mind elsewhere, planning his afternoon meditation session, mentally reciting teachings he'd memorized. Nansen appeared in the kitchen doorway, leaning on his walking stick, watching Daisuke work. After a few minutes of observation, he spoke. Daisuke, what are you doing? I'm preparing vegetables for lunch, master, Daisuke replied, without looking up, his tone suggesting this was obvious and he had more important things to do. Are you? It looks to me like you're somewhere else entirely. And these poor vegetables are being abused by a body whose mind has abandoned it. Daisuke stopped chopping and looked at the master, confused. I don't understand, master. I'm doing what was assigned to me so I can return to my meditation practice. Ah, Nansen said, settling himself onto a wooden stool near the preparation table. So you believe meditation happens only when you're sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed? You think practice is something separate from preparing food, from sweeping floors, from washing dishes? But master, the sutras speak of meditation as the path to enlightenment. Surely sitting in zazen is more valuable spiritually than cutting carrots. Nansen reached over and picked up a carrot from the pile Daisuke had been chopping. He held it up to the light coming through the window, turning it slowly, examining it with the same careful attention he gave to everything. Tell me, Daisuke, what is this? It's a carrot, master. Yes, and this carrot grew in our garden, nourished by soil and rain and sunlight, tended by monks who pulled weeds and frightened away rabbits. It transformed from a tiny seed into this orange root that will nourish our bodies and give us energy to continue practicing. This carrot participated in the great miracle of existence, the endless dance of transformation that all things engage in. And now you're going to cut it up and cook it, and it will become part of the stew that feeds 20 monks. And that stew will become part of their bodies, giving them strength and health and life. Nansen paused, still holding the carrot, his eyes never leaving Daisuke's face. Now tell me, when you cut this carrot with full attention, with respect for its journey from seed to your cutting board, with gratitude for its gift of nourishment, with presence to the texture and color and smell and the precise feeling of the knife moving through it, is that less valuable than sitting on a cushion thinking about enlightenment? Daisuke felt something crack open inside him, like an egg breaking to release what was growing within. He looked down at the cutting board, at the pile of carelessly chopped vegetables, some pieces too large, some too small, all of them processed mechanically, while his mind was somewhere else, planning for a future moment of real practice that would finally count, that would finally matter. I see, master, he said quietly. I've been treating life as if it's divided into important spiritual moments and unimportant mundane moments. But there's no such division, is there? It's all practice. It's all an opportunity to be present, to be awake, to engage fully with what's actually here. Now you're beginning to understand, Nansen said, setting down the carrot gently. Zen isn't about escaping ordinary life to achieve some special state. It's about bringing complete attention to ordinary life and discovering it's not ordinary at all. Every single moment is an opportunity to wake up. Washing dishes is practice. Sweeping floors is practice. Cutting vegetables is practice. Walking to the meditation hall is practice. Everything is practice when you're actually present for it. And nothing is practice when your mind is somewhere else, even if you're sitting on a cushion in perfect posture. He stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. So, cut these vegetables again, Daisuke. But this time, just cut vegetables. Don't think about meditation. Don't plan your afternoon. Don't mentally recite sutras. Just feel the knife in your hand. Notice the resistance as it moves through each vegetable. Pay attention to the colors and textures. Be completely here with what you're doing. That's Zen. That's the whole path right there in one carrot. Nansen shuffled out of the kitchen, leaving Daisuke alone with the vegetables and a teaching that would transform his entire practice. The young monk gathered up the carelessly cut vegetables, composted them, and started fresh. This time, he moved slowly, deliberately, bringing his complete attention to each cut. And he discovered something remarkable. When he was fully present with cutting vegetables, there was no room for the constant mental commentary that usually plagued him. When he was actually here, completely engaged with this simple task, his mind grew quiet naturally, without effort, without forcing. He experienced a peace deeper than any he'd achieved through hours of intense meditation. Not because cutting vegetables was superior to sitting meditation, but because he was finally actually doing what he was doing, instead of thinking about doing something else. Professor Tanaka, who'd been working in the garden nearby and had overheard this exchange through the open kitchen window, felt the teaching land in his own heart. He too had spent his life dividing existence into important and unimportant moments, spiritual and mundane activities, time well spent and time wasted. He'd believed his academic research was valuable and his daily routines were mere necessities to endure. But Nansen was pointing at something revolutionary. The idea that every moment was equally an opportunity for awakening. That presence itself was the practice. That the division between sacred and ordinary was a construct of the mind that prevented us from seeing the sacred nature of everything. The days continued to unfold at the temple with their simple rhythm. Wake at 4 in the morning when the wooden clappers sounded. Meditate in the dark, cold hall while stars slowly faded and dawn approached. Chant sutras together, voices blending into a single sound. Eat breakfast in silence, each movement deliberate and conscious. Work assignments throughout the morning, gardening, cleaning, repairs, cooking, studying. Lunch at noon, again in silence, eating with complete attention. Afternoon work or study, evening meditation. Dinner, free time for personal practice. Sleep at 9. Within this structure, so simple and repetitive it might seem monotonous to an outsider, Professor Tanaka discovered a richness he'd never imagined. Each day was the same, and yet each day was completely unique. Each morning's meditation session followed the same format, and yet each one revealed something new. Each meal consisted of simple food, rice, vegetables, miso soup, pickles, and yet each one was an opportunity to practice presence, to notice flavors and textures, to feel gratitude for the hands that prepared it and the earth that produced it. He watched the other monks and began to notice something. The ones who'd been practicing longest had a quality about them that was difficult to name. It wasn't happiness exactly, though they seemed content. It wasn't wisdom in the academic sense, though they demonstrated deep understanding. It was more like settledness, like they'd stopped fighting with something, and the energy that had been going into that fight was now available for simply being alive. They moved through their days with a kind of ease, an acceptance, a willingness to meet whatever arose without demanding it be different. There was an elderly monk named Hakuin who'd been at the temple for over 50 years. He was in his 70s now, his back bent, his movements slow, but his eyes sparkled with something Professor Tanaka envied. Hakuin had been assigned the task of maintaining the temple's small cemetery, and he spent his days pulling weeds from around the stone markers, planting flowers, keeping the pathways clear. Professor Tanaka sometimes joined him there, ostensibly to help, but really to be near someone who embodied whatever it was he was seeking. One afternoon, working together in comfortable silence, Professor Tanaka finally voiced the question that had been building in him. "Hakuin-san, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course," the old monk replied, continuing to pull weeds with steady hands. "You've been here for 50 years. You've dedicated your entire adult life to this practice. What have you gained? What have you achieved? What's different now than when you started?" Hakuin paused in his work and sat back on his heels, considering the question. "What have I gained?" he repeated slowly. "Nothing at all. I came here seeking enlightenment, seeking peace, seeking to become someone special, someone transcendent, and I never gained any of those things." Professor Tanaka felt disappointed. Was this what awaited him after decades of practice? Nothing. But Hakuin wasn't finished. "I never gained enlightenment because I was never unenlightened. I never gained peace because I was never truly at war, only imagining conflict. I never became someone special because there was never anything wrong with who I already was. What changed wasn't that I acquired something new. What changed was that I stopped believing I needed to acquire something new." He gestured at the cemetery around them, at the simple stone markers, at the maple tree dropping red leaves in the autumn wind. These monks who are buried here, they came seeking the same things I sought. They practiced with the same intensity, the same dedication, and then they died, just like everyone dies, enlightened or not. Their bodies returned to the earth. Their particular expression of consciousness dissolved back into mystery. And what did their seeking gain them? What did their enlightenment achieve? Then what's the point? Professor Tanaka asked, feeling a familiar despair rising. If we all die anyway, if practice doesn't protect us from loss and aging and death, why bother? Why spend years in meditation and study if it doesn't lead anywhere? Hakuin smiled, his weathered face crinkling into patterns carved by decades of laughter and tears and simple presence. The point isn't to arrive somewhere other than where you are. The point is to actually be where you are. Most people spend their entire lives mentally living in the past or future, never quite landing in the present moment. They're always preparing for life to begin, always believing that happiness is just around the next corner, always postponing their full engagement with existence until conditions are finally perfect. He pulled another weed, shook the dirt from its roots, set it aside. I spent my first 20 years here doing exactly that, treating each moment as a stepping stone to some better future moment, treating my present experience as insufficient, as something to transcend or overcome. And then one day, I realized I was going to die having never actually lived. I'd spent my whole life waiting for my real life to begin, and meanwhile, life was happening, moment by moment, breath by breath, and I was missing it. What changed? Professor Tanaka asked, genuinely curious now. Nothing changed, and everything changed. The circumstances remained the same. Same temple, same routine, same tasks. But I stopped fighting with them. I stopped demanding that this moment be different than it was. I stopped treating weeding the cemetery as an unimportant task I needed to endure before getting to the real spiritual work. I discovered that weeding the cemetery with full presence was the real spiritual work. That this moment, exactly as it is, was the only moment I'd ever actually have. That waiting for some better moment was like waiting for the ocean to stop having waves. He looked directly at Professor Tanaka, his eyes clear and steady. You came here seeking wisdom, yes? Seeking understanding, seeking something to take back with you, some knowledge that will finally make you feel complete. Yes, the professor admitted. I suppose that's exactly what I'm doing. Then let me tell you what I've learned in 50 years. You're already complete, not in the sense that you'll never grow or change. You will, constantly, until you die. But complete in the sense that your worth doesn't depend on your achievements, or your understanding, or your spiritual attainments. You don't need to earn the right to exist. You don't need to become good enough to deserve peace. You're breathing, you're alive, you're aware. That's enough. That's everything. A bell rang from the main temple, signaling the afternoon meditation session. Hakuin stood up slowly, joints creaking, and brushed dirt from his robes. Come, we'll sit together, not to achieve anything or become anyone, just to sit, just to be present with what is. That's all Zen really is, you know, just being here, just allowing life to be what it is, instead of what we think it should be. They walked together toward the meditation hall, two men of different ages and backgrounds, both learning the same essential teaching. That the peace they sought wasn't somewhere else, waiting to be found. It was here, available in any moment they stopped running long enough to notice it. That evening's meditation was like every other meditation, and unlike any before. Professor Tanaka sat on his cushion in the dimly lit hall, surrounded by monks who'd sat in these same spots hundreds of times. The incense smoke drifted upward, disappearing into darkness. Outside, crickets sang their autumn songs. The old building creaked and settled, and for the first time since arriving at the temple, Professor Tanaka didn't try to meditate. He didn't try to empty his mind or achieve a special state. He didn't measure his progress or compare himself to anyone. he just sat there, feeling his breath move in and out, noticing the ache in his knees, hearing the sounds around him, being exactly where he was without needing to be anywhere else. And in that simple sitting, without trying, without striving, something released. Some tension he'd been carrying for decades, some fundamental resistance to what is, some deep belief that he wasn't enough yet, that this moment wasn't it yet, that real life was always just ahead if he could just become worthy of it. The release was so subtle, he almost missed it, like a knot untying itself when you finally stop pulling on it. When the meditation ended and monks began filing out of the hall, Professor Tanaka remained sitting, not because he was having some profound experience he wanted to prolong, but because he simply felt no urgency to move. He was here. This was fine. There was nowhere else he needed to be, nothing else he needed to achieve. And tears rolled down his face, quiet tears of relief, of something long clenched finally relaxing. Nansen appeared beside him, moving so quietly the professor hadn't heard him approach. The old master sat down, not speaking, just being present with Tanaka's experience. After a while, he said softly, "Your cup is emptying." "Yes, master, I can feel it. All the ideas I had about what Zen was, what enlightenment looked like, what I needed to achieve, they're dissolving, and I'm terrified because I don't know what will be left when they're gone. What's left is what was always there beneath the ideas. Just this, just you, just life happening moment by moment. It's not impressive or dramatic or special. It's just real. And being real, being present with what's actually here instead of lost in concepts about what should be here, that's freedom." They sat together in the empty hall as darkness deepened outside. Eventually, Nansen stood up. "Come, let's have some tea. Real tea this time, in cups that aren't overflowing." They walked to Nansen's quarters, and the master prepared tea with the same careful attention he brought to everything. This time, when he poured, he filled each cup exactly to the proper level, no more, no less. They drank in comfortable silence, two human beings sharing tea on an autumn evening. Nothing special, nothing transcendent, just this simple moment of connection and presence. "Master," Professor Tanaka said eventually, "I need to return to the university soon. My responsibilities there can't be postponed indefinitely, but I don't want to lose what I've found here. How do I maintain this when I return to my regular life, to teaching and research and all the demands of the academic world?" Nansen set down his cup and looked at him steadily. "You won't maintain it. That's not how it works. You'll return to your busy life and get caught up in it, and forget to be present, and lose yourself in thoughts and worries and plans. You'll discover that the peace you felt here isn't a permanent state you achieved. It's something that comes and goes based on conditions." This wasn't what the professor wanted to hear, and his face showed it. "But," Nansen continued, "each time you notice you've gotten lost, you can return. Each time you realize you're somewhere else in thought, you can come back to the present moment. The practice isn't staying present all the time. That's impossible for most people. The practice is noticing when you've left and gently returning, over and over, 1,000 times a day if necessary. That's the real practice, not maintaining some ideal state, but this constant returning home to yourself, to this moment, to what's actually here. It sounds exhausting. At first it might feel that way, but gradually it becomes more natural, like learning a language. At first you have to think carefully about every word, but eventually you start speaking fluently, without conscious effort. Similarly, presence becomes more natural the more you practice it. Not effortless necessarily, but more available, more familiar, more recognizable as your true home. Professor Tanaka left the temple 2 days later, bowing deeply to Nansen, thanking him for the teachings that couldn't really be captured in words. He returned to Tokyo, to his university position, to his lectures and papers and academic responsibilities, and Nansen's prediction proved accurate. Within days, he was caught up again in the busyness of his life, his mind racing with plans and worries and analysis. But something had changed. Now, occasionally, he would catch himself. He'd be in the middle of a lecture, lost in concepts, and suddenly remember, just speak, just be here with these students. Or he'd be walking across campus, mind churning with problems, and suddenly notice, just walk, just feel your feet on the ground. Or he'd be eating lunch while reading papers, and remember Daisuke in the kitchen, just eat, just taste this food. The returns to presence were brief at first, just moments of actual being here before his mind captured him again. But over weeks and months, those moments became more frequent, more accessible. And he discovered what Nansen had promised, that presence wasn't something he needed to achieve or maintain. It was always available, waiting for him to notice it, as close as his next breath. Back at the temple, life continued its simple rhythm. Daisuke had taken Nansen's teaching about the carrots to heart and approached everything he did with new attention. Cutting vegetables became meditation. Sweeping floors became meditation. Walking to the meditation hall became meditation. He stopped dividing his life into spiritual practice and mundane tasks, and discovered that everything was practice when he brought presence to it. One winter morning, he was sweeping snow from the temple walkways before dawn. The work was cold and repetitive, and his old mind patterns kept trying to label it as unimportant, as something to endure before getting to real practice. But he kept returning to the actual experience, the scratch of the broom on stone, the soft sound of snow being pushed aside, the bite of cold air on his face, the way his breath made clouds in the darkness, the stars still visible overhead in the pre-dawn sky. And suddenly, in the middle of this completely ordinary task, something extraordinary happened. The boundaries between himself and what he was doing dissolved. There was no longer Daisuke sweeping snow. There was just sweeping happening, breathing happening, cold happening, stars happening. The sense of being a separate self, observing experience from a distance, fell away. There was only direct, immediate experience with no one experiencing it. No gap between awareness and what was being aware of. It lasted only a few seconds before his mind rushed in with commentary. "This is it! This is enlightenment! I need to remember this!" And the moment disappeared. But those few seconds transformed everything. He'd glimpsed what the masters pointed at, what all the teachings described. Not some transcendent state removed from ordinary life, but ordinary life experience directly, without the filter of self-consciousness, without the constant mental commentary, without the division between experiencer and experience. He stood there in the snow, broom in hand, tears freezing on his cheeks, understanding finally why Nansen had insisted that cutting carrots was practice, why Hakuin spent his days happily maintaining a cemetery, why the masters kept pointing at ordinary activities as opportunities for awakening. Because awakening wasn't somewhere else. It wasn't in some special state achieved through years of intense meditation. It was right here, available in any moment of complete presence, whether sweeping snow or drinking tea or walking or breathing. Daisuke finished sweeping the walkways with quiet joy, not trying to recapture that moment of dissolution, but simply continuing his work with full attention. When the morning bell rang and monks began emerging from their rooms for morning meditation, he joined them, taking his place in the hall, sitting with a new understanding of what they were actually doing here. Nansen noticed the change in Daisuke immediately. The young monk had a different quality about him now, less driven, less desperate, more settled into himself. After the morning chanting, Nansen called him aside. "Something has shifted in you," the master observed. Daisuke bowed. "Master, this morning while sweeping snow, I experienced, I can't quite describe it. The sense of self fell away. There was just sweeping, just breathing, just presence without anyone being present. It only lasted a moment, but it showed me what you've been pointing at all this time." Nansen nodded. "Good. Now forget about it." Daisuke looked confused. "Forget about it? But Master, isn't this what we're practicing for? Isn't this enlightenment? If you turn it into something you achieved, something special that happened to you, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to recapture it. The experience will become a memory, and you'll chase the memory instead of being present with what's actually here. So yes, forget about it, let it go, and simply continue your practice, sweeping when you sweep, eating when you eat, sitting when you sit. But what was the point of it then? Why did it happen if I'm just supposed to forget it? Nansen smiled. It happened to show you what's possible, to give you a taste of your true nature. But now that you've tasted it, don't spend your life licking the spoon. The point isn't to have special experiences. The point is to be present with ordinary experience. When you're fully present, the ordinary reveals itself as extraordinary. Not because anything special happens, but because you're finally actually here to notice what was always here. He placed a hand on Daisuke's shoulder. You've glimpsed something important. But if you cling to that glimpse, if you make it into an achievement that confirms you're making spiritual progress, you'll create a new form of seeking. Instead, let it inform your practice without defining it. Continue to sweep floors and cut vegetables and sit in meditation, not trying to recapture that experience, but simply being present with whatever is actually happening. Daisuke bowed deeply, understanding even as part of him resisted. His mind wanted to hold on to that moment, to examine it, to use it as proof that he was advancing spiritually. But he also recognized the wisdom in Nansen's instruction. The moment had been powerful precisely because there was no one trying to have an experience. The moment he started trying to recapture it, he'd be back in seeking mode, treating the present as insufficient, looking for something better. The winter deepened. Snow fell heavily that year, transforming the temple grounds into a landscape of white and shadow, muffling sounds, slowing everything down. The monks adapted their schedule, spending more time indoors, gathering around the fire in the common room for tea and conversation, telling stories of past masters, sharing teachings, supporting each other through the cold, dark months. One evening, as snow fell silently outside and the monks sat together drinking tea, a discussion arose about a famous koan, a Zen riddle designed to short-circuit logical thinking and point directly at truth. The koan was, "What was your original face before your parents were born?" Several monks offered interpretations. One suggested it pointed to Buddha nature, the fundamental awareness that exists before personality and conditioning. Another proposed it referred to emptiness, the absence of inherent self. A third argued it was asking about consciousness itself, the witness of all experience. Nansen listened to these scholarly discussions with amusement. Finally, he held up his teacup. "This cup," he said, "what is its original face before the potter formed it from clay?" The monks fell silent, considering. Was it clay? Was it earth? Was it minerals in mountain stone? Was it stardust formed in ancient supernovas? Where do you draw the line and say, here is where the cup began? And when this cup breaks, when it returns to shards and dust, will that be the end of it? Or will it continue transforming, becoming part of soil, part of new clay, part of future forms we can't imagine? He set down the cup. Your original face isn't something that existed in the past, before your parents were born. It's what you are beneath all the layers of conditioning and personality and story. It's the awareness that's reading these words right now, the consciousness that's listening to this teaching. It has no face because it's not a thing. It has no beginning because it was never born. It has no end because it can't die. It's what you've always been, what you'll always be, what you are right now if you look directly instead of through the filter of thought. A young monk named Kenji spoke up. "But Master, when I look directly, all I find is thoughts and sensations. I don't find this awareness you're describing. Where is it?" "Who's looking?" Nansen asked. "I am." "Show me this I that's looking." Kenji closed his eyes, searching within himself. I can't find it. When I look for the I, for the self that's looking, it disappears. There are just thoughts about I, but no actual thing I can point to." "Exactly," Nansen said softly. "The self you think you are is a story, a collection of thoughts and memories and beliefs about who you are. But what's aware of that story? What's aware of thoughts? What's aware of sensations? That awareness, that's your original face. Not a thing you can grasp or possess, but the space in which all experience arises and passes away. The room grew very quiet. Outside, snow continued falling, each flake unique and temporary and perfect. Inside, a log shifted in the fireplace, sending up sparks. And in that moment, several of the monks glimpsed what Nansen was pointing at, not through understanding it intellectually, but through direct recognition, through turning awareness back on itself and discovering the space that had been here all along, holding everything, identical to everything, the ground of all experience. Hakuin, who'd been sitting quietly listening, added his voice. When I was young, I studied this koan for years. I had all sorts of clever answers, all sorts of intellectual understanding, but I didn't really get it until I stopped trying to figure it out and simply looked. Not with my eyes, not with my thinking mind, but with direct attention. And what I found was so simple, so obvious, I almost laughed. My original face is here right now. It's always been here. It's what's reading these words, what's aware of this moment. Not a thing, but the no thing that makes all things possible. He paused, sipping his tea. The tragedy is that we spend our lives looking for something we already are. We're like the fish swimming through the ocean, asking everyone where the water is. We can't see it because we're identical to it. We can't find it because we're never separate from it. And the moment we stop searching and simply rest in what we already are, we discover we've been home all along. That night, lying in his simple room, Daisuke reflected on the evening's discussion. He thought about his moments sweeping snow, when the boundaries between self and experience had dissolved. Was that his original face? That space of pure awareness without anyone being aware? And if so, why did it come and go? Why did he sometimes experience it and other times feel completely identified with being Daisuke, a separate self navigating through a separate world? As if in response to his unspoken question, he heard Nansen's words echo in his mind. It doesn't come and go. Your awareness of it comes and goes. The space is always here. You're just sometimes recognizing it and sometimes not. Like the sky. Sometimes you notice it. Sometimes you're so focused on objects in the sky that you forget the sky itself. But it's always there. Always holding everything, whether you notice it or not. Daisuke smiled in the darkness. Yes, that made sense. His practice wasn't about achieving some state where he permanently experienced himself as spacious awareness. It was about remembering to notice what was always already here. Like returning to breath in meditation. You didn't create breath, you just returned attention to it. Similarly, you didn't create awareness, you just returned attention to it, recognized it, rested in it. Sleep came gradually, consciousness dissolving into dreams, dreams dissolving into deep sleep, the cycle of awareness continuing even as Daisuke the person temporarily disappeared, demonstrating once again that what he essentially was couldn't be limited to waking consciousness, couldn't be reduced to personality and story. Winter eventually gave way to early spring. The snow melted slowly, revealing brown earth that would soon green. Birds returned from southern climates, filling mornings with song. The monks began preparing garden beds for planting, continuing the ancient cycle of cultivation and harvest that had sustained the temple for 3 centuries. Professor Tanaka returned for a visit, taking a week away from his university responsibilities to sit with Nansen again, to reconnect with the practice that had transformed his understanding. He looked different than he had 6 months earlier, more relaxed, less driven, more present in his body, rather than lost in his head. "Welcome back," Nansen greeted him. "How has your practice been in the marketplace?" This was a traditional Zen question. How do you maintain practice not in the protected environment of a monastery, but in the busy marketplace of regular life, with all its demands and distractions and challenges? Professor Tanaka settled onto a cushion in Nansen's room, accepting a cup of tea with a small bow. It's been difficult, Master, and also easier than I expected. Difficult because I constantly forget. I get caught up in my work, in my thoughts, in worries about the future, or regrets about the past. Hours pass where I'm completely identified with my thinking mind, completely absent from the present moment. He paused, sipping his tea. But it's also easier because now I know what I'm returning to. Before I came here, I didn't even realize I was absent. I thought my constant thinking was just normal, just how life was. Now, when I notice I've been lost in thought, there's this moment of recognition. Oh, I've wandered again, and I can return. Not always, not perfectly, but more and more frequently. And what have you discovered through this practice of returning? Nansen asked. I've discovered that most of my suffering is optional. Not all of it. There's real pain in life, real challenges, real losses. But the extra layer of suffering I add through resistance, through demanding that things be different than they are, through fighting with reality, that's optional. When I'm present, even difficult things become more manageable because I'm meeting them directly, instead of also carrying all my stories about how they shouldn't be happening. Nansen nodded approvingly. You're learning the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Bodies age, people die, things change. Loss is part of life. But suffering is the story we tell about the pain, the resistance we add to it, the "this shouldn't be happening" that we layer on top of what's already difficult. When we can meet pain with presence instead of resistance, we discover we're larger than we thought. We can hold more than we imagined possible. I experienced that recently, Tanaka said. My father died last month, and it was painful. I loved him. I miss him. I grieve his absence. But I didn't suffer the way I would have before coming here. I didn't torture myself with regrets about things I should have said or done differently. I didn't make his death mean something about the universe being cruel or life being meaningless. I just felt the grief, pure and clean, without all the extra story. And somehow that was bearable. Sad, but bearable. Your father gave you a final teaching, Nansen observed. He showed you that you can meet even death with presence, not avoiding the pain, not pretending it doesn't hurt, but also not adding unnecessary suffering through resistance. That's wisdom, Tanaka. Real wisdom that comes from practice, not from books. They sat together in comfortable silence, two men who'd developed a genuine friendship despite the traditional teacher-student relationship. Outside, spring birds called to each other. The temple bell rang, marking the hour. Life continuing its ancient patterns, indifferent to human dramas and insights. Master, may I ask you something I've been wondering about? Tanaka said eventually. Of course. You're 70 years old. You've been teaching for 40 years. You've helped hundreds of students find their way. What keeps you going? What motivates you to continue after all this time? Nansen considered this, his weathered face thoughtful. What motivates the sun to rise each morning? What motivates flowers to bloom? This is just what I do. It's my nature, like teaching is your nature, like questioning and seeking truth has always been your nature. I don't teach because I think I'm going to save everyone or fix the world or achieve something. I teach because when someone comes to me, genuinely seeking, something in me responds. It's not a choice, really. It's just what flows naturally from being who I am. But don't you get tired? Don't you sometimes feel like you're repeating the same teachings over and over and people still don't get it? Of course I get tired. This body is old, and it protests more each year. And yes, I've given the same teachings thousands of times. But here's what I've learned. They're never really the same teachings. Each person receives them uniquely. Each moment is fresh. When I poured tea for you that first day and let it overflow, I'd used that teaching method before, but it had never happened exactly that way, with you, in that moment. So it was new. Everything is new when you're actually present for it. He shifted his posture slightly, adjusting for the ache in his lower back. And as for people not getting it, some get it quickly, some take years, some may never get it in this lifetime. That's not my concern. My job isn't to force understanding. My job is to point at the moon and trust that when someone is ready to look in that direction, they'll see it. You can't make someone understand. You can only create conditions where understanding might arise. How do you know when someone is ready? I don't. I offer the teaching to everyone who comes. Some receive it immediately. Some need to hear it dozens of times before it penetrates. Some aren't ready yet, and the teaching falls on deaf ears. But that's fine. The seed is planted. Maybe it will sprout tomorrow, maybe next year, maybe in 10 years when they've gone through experiences that crack them open enough to receive it. My job is just to plant seeds, not to control when or how they grow. A young monk appeared at the door, bowing apologetically. Master, forgive the interruption. A visitor has arrived asking to see you. She seems quite distressed. Show her in, Nansen said, gesturing for Tanaka to remain. A woman entered, middle-aged, dressed in traveling clothes, her face showing signs of tears. She bowed deeply to Nansen, then knelt on the floor, her hands trembling. Master, I've come seeking help. My husband has left me for another woman. We were married for 20 years, raised 2 children together, and now he's gone. I'm devastated, angry, heartbroken. I can't eat, can't sleep, can't stop thinking about it. Someone told me you teach about letting go, about finding peace. Please, help me let go of this pain. Nansen looked at her with infinite compassion. Why do you want to let go of it? The woman seemed confused by the question. Because it hurts. Because I can't live like this, consumed by pain and anger. So you want me to help you push away your feelings, to transcend them or rise above them? Yes. Isn't that what Buddhism teaches? Non-attachment, letting go. Nansen shook his head gently. That's a common misunderstanding. Letting go doesn't mean pushing away or denying your feelings. It means allowing them to be what they are without adding resistance. Right now you're in pain, and you're also at war with the pain. You're thinking, this shouldn't be happening. I need to get rid of this. Something is wrong with me for feeling this way. That resistance is creating a second layer of suffering on top of the original pain. He poured her some tea, his movements slow and deliberate. Your husband leaving is painful. Of course it is. You loved him, built a life with him, trusted him. That trust has been broken, and that hurts. The pain is valid, real, understandable, but you're also telling yourself stories about what this means, that you're not good enough, that you failed, that you'll never be happy again, that you can't survive this. Those stories aren't truth. They're suffering you're adding to pain. The woman accepted the tea with shaking hands. So what should I do? Just accept that he left. Just be okay with it. No, I'm not asking you to be okay with it. I'm suggesting you allow yourself to not be okay with it. Stop fighting with your feelings. Stop judging yourself for being hurt and angry. Those feelings are appropriate responses to betrayal and loss. Let them be here. Feel them fully, without resistance, without the extra layer of, I shouldn't feel this way. But if I do that, won't I just drown in the feelings? Won't they consume me? Actually, the opposite happens. When you stop resisting your feelings, when you allow them to move through you without fighting them, they begin to process naturally. Like weather, a storm is intense while it's happening, but it passes. Your feelings are like weather patterns moving through you. They're intense, but they're also temporary. When you resist them, you lock them in place. When you allow them, they flow through and eventually shift. Tanaka, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. I lost my father recently, and what the master is describing, I experienced it. When I let myself feel the grief without fighting it, without telling myself I shouldn't feel sad, or that I needed to be strong, or that I should be over it already, the grief was intense, but it was also clean. It moved through me in waves. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes I felt numb. Sometimes I felt angry at death itself. And I let all of it be what it was. And gradually, It shifted. The pain is still there, but it's no longer consuming me. The woman looked between them, something in her face beginning to soften. So you're saying I don't need to fix this? I don't need to become someone who's not hurt by what happened? Exactly, Nansen confirmed. You're already hurt. Fighting with that fact doesn't change it. It just adds suffering to pain. What if, instead of trying to not be hurt, you simply acknowledged, yes, I'm hurt. Yes, this is painful. Yes, I'm angry and sad and confused. And all of that is okay. I'm allowed to feel what I feel. I'm allowed to be human, to be affected by loss, to need time to grieve and heal. But everyone tells me I need to let go and move on. And you will in time. But you can't force it. Letting go isn't something you do. It's something that happens naturally when you stop clinging and stop resisting. Right now, you're clinging to the relationship that ended and resisting the reality that it's over. Both of those cause suffering. What if you could acknowledge that it's over without making that mean something terrible about you? What if you could grieve what you lost without making it mean you'll never be happy again? The woman sat, quietly, absorbing this. Slowly, her breathing deepened. Some of the tension in her shoulders released. I think I understand. I've been fighting with myself, trying to force myself to feel different than I feel. And that's been exhausting, hasn't it? Maybe more exhausting than the actual feelings. Yes, Nansen said gently. The feelings are what they are. The war with the feelings is optional. You can't control what you feel, but you can stop judging yourself for it. You can stop demanding that you be farther along in your healing than you are. You can meet yourself where you actually are with compassion instead of criticism. She stayed at the temple for 3 days, sitting in meditation, walking the gardens, talking with Nansen and other monks, slowly learning to be present with her pain instead of fighting it. And something remarkable happened. When she stopped resisting her grief, when she allowed herself to feel it fully, it began to shift, not disappearing, but becoming more bearable, more integrated, less all-consuming. On her final evening at the temple, she sat with Nansen watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Master, I came here hoping you'd teach me how to stop hurting. Instead, you taught me how to hurt without suffering. That's a strange gift, but I think it's exactly what I needed. Nansen smiled. Pain is part of life. Love makes us vulnerable to loss. Opening our hearts means accepting that they might be broken, but the breaking doesn't destroy us unless we resist it. When we can let our hearts break open instead of closed, we discover a strange thing. We become more compassionate, more understanding, more human. Your pain has cracked you open. What grows in that crack is up to you. She bowed deeply, tears flowing freely now, but different tears than when she'd arrived. Not tears of desperation and resistance, but tears of release, of acceptance, of beginning to make peace with what is. She left the next morning with something she hadn't expected, not freedom from pain, but freedom within pain. The ability to hold her hurt without being consumed by it. After she departed, Tanaka approached Nansen. Master, I've been thinking about what you told her, about letting go not meaning pushing away. I realize I've been doing that in my own practice. When difficult emotions arise during meditation, I try to transcend them or rise above them. I treat them as obstacles to overcome rather than as part of the practice itself. Yes, that's a common mistake, Nansen acknowledged. We think spiritual practice means getting rid of our human messiness, transcending our emotions, our bodies, our ordinary human experience. But that's just another form of rejection. Another way of saying, this moment isn't good enough. I need to be somewhere else. Real practice is bringing presence to whatever is actually arising, including and especially the difficult things. How do I do that? How do I be present with anger or fear or sadness without getting lost in them? You feel them in your body rather than thinking about them. Anger isn't a story about why you have the right to be angry. It's heat in your chest, tension in your jaw, energy moving through you. Fear isn't a narrative about all the terrible things that might happen. It's tightness in your belly, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing. When you feel emotions directly as physical sensations, rather than getting caught in the stories about them, they become workable. You can be present with sensation. You can breathe with it, allow it, let it move through you. And the stories? The thoughts that come with the emotions? Notice them as thoughts. Oh, there's my mind telling me a story about why this feeling is justified. Oh, there's my mind catastrophizing about the future. You don't have to believe every thought that arises. Thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. You can notice them without grabbing onto them, without making them true just because they appeared. Tanaka nodded slowly, taking this in. I have so much more to learn. Everyone does. That's not a problem. That's the reality of being human. We're all works in progress, all learning, all growing, all discovering new depths to what it means to be alive and conscious. The difference between people who are suffering and people who are at peace isn't that the peaceful ones have learned everything. It's that they've made peace with still learning, still making mistakes, still being imperfect humans stumbling toward truth. The days of Tanaka's visit passed quickly. He sat in meditation with the monks each morning, worked in the garden, had several deep conversations with Hakuin about aging and death and the preciousness of time. On his last evening, he sought out Daisuke, curious about the young monk who'd experienced that moment of dissolution while sweeping snow. He found Daisuke in the kitchen preparing dinner, moving with calm efficiency, each action complete and whole. "May I help?" Tanaka asked. "Of course," Daisuke replied, gesturing to a pile of vegetables. "These need chopping for the soup." They worked together in companionable silence for a while. Then Tanaka said, "I heard you had a significant experience a few months ago, while sweeping snow. Would you be willing to tell me about it?" Daisuke smiled, continuing to stir the pot on the stove. "It was nothing special, just a moment when the sense of being a separate self fell away. But Master Nansen told me to forget about it, and that's good advice. The experience isn't the point. Being present is the point. But surely that experience changed something for you?" "Yes and no. It showed me what's possible, what's always been here beneath the surface activity of mind. But it also created a trap. For weeks afterward, I kept trying to recapture it. Every time I swept or meditated or did anything, part of me was checking. Is it happening again? Am I getting close to that state?" And that very seeking prevented it from arising naturally. He paused, tasting the soup, adding a pinch of salt. "I finally understood what Master meant about forgetting it. The experience was a gift, a glimpse of my true nature. But clinging to the memory of it was just another form of rejecting the present moment. Another way of saying, what's here now isn't good enough. I want that special experience back. So, I let it go. And paradoxically, when I stopped seeking it, I started noticing that the quality of presence it revealed is actually always available. Not as a dramatic experience, but as the simple fact of being aware, being here, being present with chopping vegetables or stirring soup." Tanaka felt something shift in his understanding. So the dramatic experiences, the moments of clarity or dissolution or whatever we want to call them, they're not the goal. They're signposts. They show us what we're looking for is already here. But if we make them into goals, we miss the point. The point is this. He gestured at the kitchen, the vegetables, the steam rising from the pot, the simple act of preparing food. This moment, exactly as it is complete. Nothing needs to be added. We don't need a special experience to make it valid or worthwhile. We just need to be present with it. That's what Master Nansen has been trying to tell me from the beginning, Tanaka realized. When he let the tea overflow, he was showing me that I was so full of ideas about what Zen should be that I couldn't experience what it actually is. And what it actually is just this. just being present with tea, with vegetables, with whatever is here. Exactly, Daisuke confirmed. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to go to a monastery to practice this. You can practice it anywhere, in your office, in your classroom, walking down the street, eating lunch. Any moment can be a moment of presence if you're willing to actually be there for it. The dinner bell rang, calling everyone to the meal. Tanaka helped Daisuke carry the food to the dining hall, and they ate together in silence, as was the temple custom. But this time, the silence felt different to Tanaka. Not empty or awkward, but full, rich. Each bite of food a complete experience. Each moment at the table, an opportunity to be present rather than lost in thought about the past or future. After dinner, he found himself alone in the meditation hall, sitting in the dimness, watching shadows dance as candles flickered. This would be his last evening at the temple for a while. Tomorrow he'd return to Tokyo, to his teaching and research, to the busy marketplace of regular life. But something had solidified in him during this visit, a deeper understanding, a clearer seeing of what practice actually was. He thought about the woman who'd come seeking help with her heartbreak, thought about how Nansen had taught her to be with her pain rather than fight it, thought about Daisuke learning that dramatic experiences weren't the goal, thought about Hakuin maintaining the cemetery for 50 years, finding richness in simple, repetitive tasks, thought about his own journey from intellectual seeking to direct experience, and he saw the common thread running through all of it: presence, being here, meeting life directly instead of through the filter of concepts and stories, accepting what is instead of demanding it be different, not as a philosophy to believe in, but as a living practice, moment by moment, breath by breath, for the rest of his life. "Thank you," he whispered into the empty hall, though he couldn't have said exactly who or what he was thanking. The temple, perhaps, the teachers, the practice itself, the mysterious force that had brought him here and opened him to teachings he didn't know he needed. Nansen appeared in the doorway, moving quietly despite his age. He sat down beside Tanaka without speaking, and they sat together as darkness deepened outside, two men at different stages of the same pathless path, both understanding that the journey never ended, that there was always more to discover, always deeper to go, always new ways of being present with the simple miracle of existence. Finally, Nansen spoke. "You'll do well, my friend. You've emptied your cup enough to receive the teachings. Now the real work begins, living them, not just understanding them, bringing presence to the marketplace, to the classroom, to the 1,000 small moments of each day. That's where practice really happens. Not here in the protected environment of a monastery, but out there in the mess and beauty of ordinary life. I'm grateful, Master, for everything, for your patience with my intellectual seeking, for showing me that what I was looking for was here all along, for teaching me how to return home to myself. I taught you nothing. You discovered what was always already true. I just asked a few questions and got out of the way. That's all teaching really is. Helping people see what they've been looking at but not seeing, like pointing at the moon. I'm not giving you the moon. I'm just directing your attention so you notice what was always there." They sat until the candles burned low, until other monks began arriving for evening meditation, until the hall filled with silent practitioners settling into stillness. And Tanaka joined them, sitting his final meditation at the temple, feeling gratitude and sadness and peace all mingled together, not trying to hold on to anything, not trying to push anything away, just being present with the complex mixture of human feeling that accompanies transitions and endings. The next morning, Tanaka prepared to leave. He'd packed his few belongings, said his goodbyes to the monks he'd come to know, and now stood at the temple gate with Nansen, preparing for their final exchange before his departure. "Master, before I go, may I ask one more question?" Nansen nodded, leaning on his walking stick, the morning sun illuminating his weathered face. "When I return to my busy life, When I get caught up in thinking and worrying and planning, when I forget to be present for days or weeks at a time, how do I not despair? How do I not judge myself as failing at practice? Nansen's eyes crinkled with warmth. By remembering that forgetting is part of the practice, you will forget. Everyone forgets. I forget sometimes, even after 40 years of teaching. The mind is powerful, and its habit of pulling us into thought is deeply ingrained. So when you notice you've forgotten, don't add judgment to forgetfulness. Don't make it mean you're failing, or that you're not spiritual enough, or that you should be further along. Just notice, oh, I forgot, and then return. That noticing and returning, that's the practice. Not maintaining perfect presence, but this endless cycle of forgetting and remembering, wandering and returning. It sounds like the practice never ends. It doesn't, but that's not a problem. That's the reality of being human. We're always in process, always learning, always discovering new depths. The peace we find isn't a permanent state where everything is finally resolved. It's learning to be at peace with the ongoing process itself, with the constant flow of experience, with the fact that we'll always be navigating the territory between confusion and clarity. Tanaka bowed deeply, holding the bow for a long moment, expressing gratitude too deep for words. When he straightened, his eyes were wet. I'll return when I can. The temple will be here, and if not this temple, then another. The practice doesn't depend on location. It's available wherever you are, whatever you're doing. You carry the temple in your heart now. Tanaka walked down the mountain path, turning once to look back at the temple nestled among pine trees, its roof tiles gleaming in morning light, smoke rising from the kitchen where monks were preparing breakfast. He committed the scene to memory, knowing he might not return for months or even years, wanting to hold this image as a reminder of what he'd discovered here. But even as he tried to preserve the moment, he heard Nansen's voice in his mind. Don't cling to memories. They're already gone. Be present with what's actually here. This step, this breath, this moment of walking away. He smiled, released his grip on the image, and turned his attention to the path beneath his feet, the cool morning air, the sound of birds in the trees. Just walking, just being here, just this. Back at the temple, life continued its rhythmic patterns. Morning meditation, morning chants, breakfast, work assignments, study, lunch, afternoon work, evening meditation, dinner, personal practice, sleep. The same schedule day after day, and yet always fresh for those actually present with it. Daisuke had been given a new responsibility, helping to train newer monks in the basics of practice. He found this challenging in unexpected ways. It was easy to understand something yourself. It was much harder to help someone else understand it, especially when the understanding wasn't intellectual, but experiential. One of his students was a young woman named Ayame, who'd arrived at the temple 6 months earlier, fleeing a life that had become unbearable. She'd been working in Tokyo's financial district, 60-hour weeks, constant pressure, her identity completely wrapped up in her career success. When she'd suffered a breakdown, when her body and mind finally rebelled against the relentless pace, she'd quit everything and come to the monastery seeking peace. But Ayame brought her achievement-oriented mindset with her. She approached Zen practice the way she'd approached her career, as something to master, to excel at, to prove her worth through. She meditated longer than anyone else, studied harder, worked with fierce intensity, and she was miserable because she was still operating from the same fundamental assumption, that she needed to achieve something to be acceptable, that her worth depended on her performance. Daisuke recognized this pattern because it had been his own. He remembered how he'd treated meditation as a test to pass, how he'd divided activities into spiritual and mundane, how he'd exhausted himself trying to become someone worthy of peace. So he understood what Ayame was going through, and he had compassion for her struggle. One afternoon, he found her in the meditation hall outside of scheduled practice time, sitting rigidly, her face tense with effort. He sat down nearby, not speaking, just being present. After a while, Ayame opened her eyes, saw him, and immediately looked guilty. "I know I'm not supposed to be here outside regular meditation times," she said, "but I'm so behind. Everyone else seems to understand the practice, and I'm still struggling. I thought if I put in extra hours..." "Ayame," Daisuke interrupted gently, "what are you trying to achieve?" "Peace, enlightenment, understanding. Whatever it is everyone else has that I'm missing." "And how's that working for you? All this extra effort, all this striving, is it bringing you peace?" She slumped, the rigid posture collapsing. "No, it's making me more anxious. I can't quiet my mind. I can't achieve the states the sutras describe. I feel like I'm failing at being a monk the same way I failed at being a financial analyst." "What if you're not failing? What if you're just trying to do the impossible?" "What do you mean?" Daisuke settled into a more comfortable position, inviting her to do the same. She reluctantly allowed her spine to soften, her shoulders to drop. "You're trying to achieve peace through effort," he explained. "But peace isn't an achievement. It's what's already here when you stop trying so hard. You're like someone trying to find their glasses while they're already wearing them. The harder you search, the more you miss what's right there." "But the Buddha taught the Eightfold Path, right effort, all of that. Doesn't that mean we need to try?" "There's a difference between skillful effort and striving. Skillful effort is showing up for practice, being consistent, paying attention. Striving is demanding that practice give you specific results, measuring yourself against an ideal, treating each moment as a test you need to pass. You're doing the second one." Ayame was quiet, absorbing this. "So what should I do instead?" "Stop trying to get somewhere. You're already here. This moment is already complete. You don't need to add anything to it or achieve any special state for it to be acceptable." "But I feel anxious, scattered, unable to concentrate." "How is that acceptable?" "It's acceptable because it's what's actually true right now. You're anxious. Okay. Can you be anxious without also being anxious about being anxious? Can you feel scattered without judging yourself as failing? Can you notice your inability to concentrate without making it mean something bad about you?" "I don't know. I've spent my whole life judging myself, measuring myself, trying to improve myself. I don't know how to just be." "Neither did I," Daisuke admitted. "I spent years treating practice as another performance I needed to excel at. It took me a long time to understand that the whole point was to stop performing, to stop trying to be someone other than who I am, to just show up honestly, with all my mess and confusion and imperfection, and allow that to be enough." "How did you learn that?" "Through forgetting it and remembering it over and over, through having experiences that showed me what's possible when I get out of my own way, through teachers who were patient with my striving and kept pointing me back to simplicity, and mostly through failing at trying too hard until I finally got tired enough to stop trying." He smiled at her, and there was something in his expression, not pity but recognition, fellow feeling, the understanding of someone who'd walked a similar path. "Ayame, let me share something with you. A few months ago, I was sweeping snow, and for a brief moment, the sense of being a separate self fell away. There was just sweeping, just presence, just this vast awareness without anyone being aware. It was remarkable, profound, exactly what I'd been seeking for years." "That sounds amazing," Ayame said, leaning forward. "How did you make it happen? What technique did you use?" "That's the thing. I didn't make it happen. It happened when I stopped trying to make anything happen. I was just sweeping snow, fully present with the task, not seeking any special experience. And precisely because I wasn't seeking, there was space for something to reveal itself. So, I need to stop seeking." Daisuke laughed. "You can't try to stop seeking. That's just more seeking. You can't make yourself not try. That's still trying. There's no technique for this, no method you can apply. All you can do is notice when you're striving, when you're measuring, when you're treating this moment as insufficient. And in that noticing, there might be a tiny gap, a little space of awareness where you're not caught in the pattern. You can't force that gap to appear, but you can become familiar with it when it does. This is so frustrating, Ayame said, but she was smiling slightly, recognizing the absurdity of her frustration about not being able to force herself to stop forcing. It is frustrating. Welcome to Zen. It's full of paradoxes and impossibilities and teachings that make no logical sense. The intellectual mind hates it because it can't grasp it, can't turn it into a system or method. You have to discover it directly, through your own experience, and no one can give you that experience. They can only point in its direction. They sat together quietly. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Somewhere in the temple, someone was sweeping. The rhythmic sound was soothing, repetitive, endless. "Can I tell you what helped me?" Daisuke said after a while. "Not as a technique you should apply, but just as one person sharing their experience with another." Ayame nodded, grateful for anything that might illuminate this confusing path. I started paying attention to the moments when I wasn't trying. Usually they were moments when I'd forgotten to be spiritual, when I was just living, walking from one building to another and suddenly noticing the way light fell through leaves, drinking tea after work and actually tasting it instead of thinking about my next task, lying down at night and feeling my body relax into the bed. These weren't special meditation experiences. They were just moments of actually being present, of the constant mental commentary falling away for a second. He paused, gathering his thoughts, and I started to notice a pattern. The moments of genuine presence almost always came when I'd stopped trying to be present, when I'd given up on making something happen and just allowed myself to be tired or bored or ordinary. There was something about that surrender, that release of effort, that created space for what I'd been seeking to reveal itself. So you're saying I should give up? Not give up on practice. Give up on the idea that practice is about becoming someone other than who you are. You're already complete, Ayame. Not in the sense that you won't grow and change. You will, constantly. But complete in the sense that your worth isn't determined by your spiritual achievements. You don't need to earn the right to be at peace. You're allowed to be exactly where you are in your development, with all your anxiety and confusion and striving. But if I accept where I am, won't I just stay stuck here? Don't I need to push myself to grow? Growth happens naturally when we stop resisting what is. A seed doesn't need to try to become a flower. It becomes a flower by being fully a seed, by allowing each stage of development to unfold according to its own timing. When you try to force yourself to be further along than you are, you're working against your own nature. When you accept where you actually are, you create the conditions for natural transformation. Ayame sat with this, her analytical mind trying to grasp it, trying to turn it into a method she could implement. Daisuke watched this happening, recognized it, decided to try a different approach. "Let's do an experiment," he said. "Right now, don't try to meditate. Don't try to be present. Don't try to achieve anything. Just sit here with me. Be as distracted as you want. Think about whatever comes up. Judge yourself if that happens. Just allow your experience to be exactly what it is without trying to change it." Ayame looked skeptical, but closed her eyes. Within seconds, her mind was racing with thoughts. She noticed this and immediately began judging herself for it, which created more thoughts about the judging, which created frustration about not being able to quiet her mind, which created more judgment in an endless spiral. "What's happening?" Daisuke asked gently. "My mind is going crazy. It won't stop. Even though you said I don't have to try, I'm still trying. I can't help it." "Okay. Can you notice that without judging it? Can you simply observe? My mind is trying even when I've been given permission not to try. That's interesting. I wonder what that's about." Ayame took a breath, shifted her perspective slightly. Instead of being caught in the trying, she stepped back just enough to notice it happening. "It's like there's a part of me that doesn't trust that it's okay to just be. Like if I stop pushing and striving and forcing, everything will fall apart. Like my worth depends on constant effort, Yes. And where did you learn that? Tears gathered in her eyes. Everywhere. My parents always pushed me to achieve more. School was constant competition. My career was all about performance and results. I've never been allowed to just be enough as I am. There's always been another goal, another standard to meet, another way I needed to improve. And you brought that pattern here. You're trying to achieve spiritual success the same way you tried to achieve career success. You're treating Zen as another performance, the Buddha as another demanding boss, enlightenment as another promotion to earn. I didn't realize I was doing that. Of course not. It's unconscious. It's how you learn to survive in a world that constantly told you that you weren't enough yet. But here's what I want you to consider. What if that whole paradigm is false? What if your worth doesn't depend on achievement? What if you're already enough, right now, exactly as you are, anxious and striving and confused? Ayame opened her eyes, looking directly at Daisuke. I don't know how to believe that. You don't need to believe it. Just be willing to question whether the opposite is true. Question whether you really do need to achieve some spiritual state to be acceptable. Question whether this moment really is insufficient. Question whether you really are failing just because your mind won't quiet down. They sat together in silence for a long time. Ayame felt something shifting inside her, some deeply held assumption being loosened. She didn't have answers, didn't suddenly believe she was enough, didn't magically stop striving, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Maybe, just maybe, she'd been operating from a false premise. Maybe the whole exhausting effort to become worthy of peace was based on the mistaken belief that she wasn't already worthy. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't fully understand yet, but something you said landed. I'll keep sitting with it. That's all any of us can do. Keep sitting with the questions. Keep noticing our patterns. Keep being willing to have our assumptions challenged. The understanding doesn't come from figuring it out intellectually. It comes from living with the question until the answer reveals itself through direct experience. After Ayame left, Daisuke remained in the meditation hall, reflecting on their conversation. Teaching was challenging in ways he hadn't anticipated. It required him to articulate things he'd only understood intuitively, to find words for experiences beyond words, to remember his own journey clearly enough to meet students where they were, without imposing his path on them. But it also deepened his own practice. Each question a student asked forced him to look more carefully at his own understanding. Each struggle they shared reminded him of his own struggles and how he'd worked with them. Teaching wasn't a one-way transmission of knowledge from someone who knew to someone who didn't. It was a mutual exploration, both people learning together, both being transformed by the encounter. That evening, during Nansen's regular Dharma talk, the master spoke about the nature of struggle in spiritual practice, as if he'd somehow overheard the conversation between Daisuke and Ayame, though that was impossible. His words addressed exactly what they'd been discussing. Many people come to Zen seeking to escape struggle, Nansen began, his voice carrying easily through the quiet hall where 40 monks sat listening. They're struggling in their lives, and they hope that spiritual practice will finally end that struggle, will transport them to some peaceful state where nothing is difficult anymore. He paused, letting that sink in. But this hope is based on a misunderstanding. Struggle is inherent in existence. Bodies age and get sick. Relationships end or become difficult. People we love die. Circumstances change in ways we don't want. We can't escape these realities through spiritual practice or any other means. They're simply part of being alive. So what does practice offer, if not escape from struggle? He answered his own question. It offers a different relationship to struggle. Instead of struggling against struggle, instead of adding resistance to difficulty, we can learn to meet what's hard with presence and acceptance. We can discover that we're larger than we thought, that we can hold more than we imagined possible. The Buddha didn't teach us to transcend human experience. He taught us to be fully human without creating extra suffering on top of the pain that's inevitable. He taught us to see clearly, to accept what is, to let go of our resistance to reality. And in that acceptance, in that letting go, we discover a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect. We discover we can be at peace even in the midst of difficulty, not because the difficulty has disappeared, but because we've stopped fighting with it. Someone raised a hand. Master, how do we know when we're accepting difficulty versus just being passive and not addressing problems that should be addressed? Good question. True acceptance is active, not passive. When you accept what is, you're not saying, I like this, or I want this to continue. You're saying, this is what's actually happening right now. From that clear seeing, wise action arises naturally. But when you're resisting what is, when you're fighting with reality, you're too busy arguing with the situation to respond to it skillfully. For example, if you're sick, acceptance means acknowledging, yes, my body is sick right now. From that acceptance, you can take appropriate action, rest, see a doctor, take medicine. But if you resist the sickness, if you spend all your energy thinking this shouldn't be happening, why is this happening to me? I don't have time for this. You create suffering on top of the physical discomfort, and you're less able to care for yourself skillfully. Another monk spoke up. But Master, doesn't acceptance of difficulty make us complacent? Won't we just tolerate suffering instead of working to change conditions? No. Understanding the difference between pain and suffering doesn't make us passive. It makes us more effective. When we're not wasting energy fighting with what is, when we're not lost in stories about how things shouldn't be this way, we have more clarity and energy available to work with what's actually here. Social injustice should be addressed, but we address it more effectively, from a place of clear seeing, rather than from reactive anger. Our own unhealthy patterns should be transformed, but we transform them more successfully from a place of acceptance rather than harsh self-judgment. The talk continued for another hour, with Nansen responding to questions, offering examples from his own decades of practice, pointing always toward the same essential teaching. Be present with what is, accept what you can't change, take wise action where action is possible, and learn to distinguish between the two. After the talk ended and monks dispersed to their evening routines, Ayame approached Nansen. She'd been deeply affected by his words about acceptance and wanted to ask something that had been troubling her since her conversation with Daisuke. Master, may I ask you something personal? Nansen gestured for her to sit. Of course. I came here running from a life that had become unbearable. I was working myself to death, literally making myself sick with stress and overwork. And now I find myself doing the same thing here, working myself to exhaustion, trying to be a good monk, trying to achieve enlightenment, trying to earn peace. It's like I brought my old patterns with me and just changed the context. How do I break this cycle? Nansen looked at her with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see straight through to the core of things. You don't break it, you see it. You're already seeing it, which is why you're asking this question. The cycle perpetuates itself through unconsciousness. The moment you become conscious of the pattern, you've already begun to loosen its hold. But seeing it doesn't seem to stop me from doing it. I still catch myself pushing too hard, judging myself, measuring my progress. Of course you do. This pattern has been developing for your entire life. It won't disappear just because you've noticed it. But each time you notice it, there's a moment of choice. A gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, you might choose differently, or you might not. You might fall back into the pattern. Either way is fine. The point isn't to be perfect at catching yourself. The point is to keep bringing awareness to the pattern. So I just keep noticing it. That's the practice? That's a huge part of the practice. Noticing without judging. Seeing clearly without harsh criticism. There I go again. Trying to achieve, measuring myself, treating this moment as insufficient. Interesting. I wonder what drives that. Not as a problem to fix, but as a pattern to understand with curiosity and compassion. Ayame felt something release in her chest. You're saying I can be curious about my patterns instead of ashamed of them. Shame doesn't change anything. It just adds another layer of suffering. Curiosity, on the other hand, opens up space for transformation. When you're curious about your patterns, when you investigate them with genuine interest rather than harsh judgment, you start to see the mechanisms beneath them. You start to understand why they developed, what function they served, what beliefs they're based on. And then what? Once I understand them? Sometimes understanding itself is enough to loosen a pattern. Sometimes you need to work with them more actively, noticing when they arise, choosing different responses, building new neural pathways through repetition. Sometimes the patterns never fully disappear, but you develop a different relationship to them. They become like weather. You notice them passing through without identifying with them or believing they're the truth of who you are. He poured tea for both of them, his movements slow and deliberate. Ayame, let me tell you a story. When I was young, much younger than you, I also struggled with the need to achieve, to be special, to prove my worth through accomplishment. I came to Zen practice thinking it would be another arena where I could excel, where I could finally become the person I thought I needed to be. What happened? I exhausted myself. I meditated until I injured my knees. I studied until my eyes couldn't focus. I worked harder than anyone else and was utterly miserable because the harder I tried, the more elusive peace became. And then one day, I got sick. Really sick. Too sick to meditate, too sick to study, too sick to do anything except lie in bed and be sick. He smiled at the memory. And in that enforced stillness, with no ability to achieve or accomplish or prove anything, something shifted. I had no choice but to just be, just exist, just breathe and be sick and let myself be cared for. And I discovered that the world didn't end. My worth didn't evaporate. Life continued, and I was still part of it, even though I wasn't achieving anything. So sickness taught you acceptance. Sickness taught me that I was more than my achievements, that my worth didn't depend on what I could do or accomplish, that I was allowed to simply exist, to be a human being having a human experience, without needing to earn that right through performance. But you still practice, still teach, still accomplish things. Yes, but from a different place. Not from the belief that I need to achieve to be worthy, from the natural expression of who I am. Teaching flows from me because it's my nature, like water flows downhill. Not because I'm trying to prove something or become someone or achieve enlightenment, just because this is what I do. Ayame absorbed this, sipping her tea slowly. I think I understand intellectually, but I don't know how to get there experientially, how to shift from achieving to just being. You don't get there. Getting there is still achieving. You notice when you're in achieving mode and you gently return to being mode, over and over, 10,000 times. Eventually, being becomes more natural than achieving. Not because you've mastered some technique, but because you've worn a new groove in your consciousness through repetition. That sounds like it takes a long time. It takes however long it takes. For some people, it's sudden. Some experience cracks them open and everything shifts. For most people, it's gradual. Years of small insights accumulating until they look back and realize they're different than they were. Either way is fine. The point isn't to rush towards some destination. The point is to be present with the journey. They sat together finishing their tea. Through the window, stars were becoming visible as darkness deepened. The temple bell rang, marking the hour. Everything continuing its ancient rhythm, indifferent to human struggles and insights. Master, one more question if I may. Of course. When you talk about being present, about accepting, does that mean we never feel dissatisfaction? Never want things to be different? Never work to improve ourselves or our circumstances? Nansen set down his cup and leaned back slightly. No. It means we distinguish between two kinds of dissatisfaction. There's the dissatisfaction that comes from clear seeing, recognizing that something isn't working, that change would be beneficial, that growth is possible. That dissatisfaction is useful. It motivates appropriate action. And then there's the dissatisfaction that comes from resistance to what is. The belief that this moment shouldn't be this way, that I should be further along, that something is fundamentally wrong. That dissatisfaction creates suffering without leading to useful action. How do I tell the difference? The first kind feels clean, clear, energizing. It leads to specific actions that address specific situations. The second kind feels muddy, confused, depleting. It leads to spinning in circles, to chronic dissatisfaction that's never resolved no matter what changes. The first comes from wisdom. The second comes from resistance to reality. So I can want to grow and change while also accepting where I am. Not only can you, that's the only way real growth happens. When you accept where you are, you see clearly what's actually here. From that clear seeing, you can work skillfully with what needs attention. But when you reject where you are, when you're at war with your current state, you're too busy fighting to grow effectively. Ayame bowed deeply. Thank you, Master. I came here with one question, and you've given me enough to contemplate for months. Good. Don't try to understand it all at once. Let the teachings work on you over time. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust that you're exactly where you need to be in your development, even when it doesn't feel that way. After Ayame left, Nansen sat alone in his room, feeling the weight of his 70 years, feeling the accumulated wisdom of 4 decades of teaching, feeling also the mystery that never diminished no matter how much he understood. He taught thousands of students over the years. Some had grasped the teachings quickly. Some had struggled for years before something clicked. Some had left without ever really understanding, and all of it was perfect, exactly as it needed to be. He thought about his own teacher, dead now for 30 years, who'd shown him the same patience he tried to show his students, who'd waited while Nansen exhausted himself trying to achieve enlightenment through force of will, who'd pointed towards simplicity when Nansen was lost in complexity, who'd demonstrated through his own being that wisdom wasn't about transcending humanity, but about being fully human without creating extra suffering. Thank you, old friend, Nansen whispered to his long-dead teacher. I'm still learning what you tried to teach me, still discovering depths to your simple pointing, still finding new ways to be present with this precious, difficult, beautiful existence. The weeks flowed by at the temple, each one similar to the last in schedule and structure, each one unique in the particular challenges and insights that arose. Winter gave way fully to spring. The garden burst into bloom. Monks planted the summer vegetables. Birds built nests in the eaves. Life expressing itself endlessly, forming and dissolving, the same patterns repeating across millennia, each iteration somehow fresh. Hakuin, the elderly monk who maintained the cemetery, began to fail. His strength diminished noticeably week by week. Tasks that had once been easy became difficult, then impossible. He moved more slowly, rested more often, sometimes forgot what he'd been doing mid-task. The other monks helped him quietly, taking over his duties when he couldn't manage them, supporting him with the same tenderness he'd shown countless students over his decades at the temple. One afternoon, Daisuke found him sitting on a bench near the cemetery, looking out at the mountains, his face peaceful, despite his obvious physical decline. "May I join you?" Daisuke asked. "Please." Hakuin gestured to the space beside him. They sat together watching clouds drift across distant peaks. After a while, Hakuin spoke. "I'm dying, you know. Probably have a few months left, maybe less. The body is wearing out." Daisuke felt sadness rise in his chest. "I'm sorry, Hakuin-san. Is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable? You're already doing it. Everyone has been very kind." He smiled. "I'm not afraid, if that's what you're wondering. I've lived a full life, practiced sincerely, loved deeply, contributed what I could. What more could I ask for? Are you at peace with it? With dying?" Hakuin considered this carefully. "Peace with it? Not exactly. I still prefer being alive. My body still resists the idea of stopping. But I'm not fighting with the reality of it either. Death is coming. That's clear. Fighting with that fact won't change it. Will only make my remaining time more difficult. So I'm meeting it with as much presence as I can manage. Some days that's easier than others. What's it like? Knowing you're dying? Clarifying. Everything becomes very simple. All the things I used to think were important. They're revealed as less significant than I believed. And the things I sometimes took for granted, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of tea, a kind word from a friend, they become precious. Each moment feels weighted with meaning because I know how few remain. He turned to look at Daisuke directly. Actually, that's not quite true. I don't know how few remain. None of us do. I might die tonight, or I might live another year. But having a sense of the general time frame, having the body's decline as a constant reminder, it keeps me present in a way I wasn't always present when I assumed I had decades ahead of me. So in some way, knowing you're dying has been a gift. Every experience is a gift if we're willing to receive it. Even this, even the gradual failing of the body, the loss of capacities I once had, the approaching end of this particular life. It's all teaching me something, showing me something about impermanence, about letting go, about what remains when everything else falls away. What does remain? Hakuin smiled. That's the question, isn't it? What am I beyond this body, this personality, this particular collection of memories and habits? When all of that dissolves, what's left? I don't know yet. I'll find out soon enough. But there's something in me that's curious rather than terrified. Something that wants to see what death actually is, beyond all our concepts and fears about it. They sat in silence for a long time. A butterfly landed on Hakuin's hand, rested there for a moment, then flew away. He watched it with delight, like a child seeing something miraculous. "See that," he said. "A few years ago, I would have noticed it, appreciated it, then moved on to thinking about something else. Now it feels like the most important thing that's ever happened. A butterfly landing on my hand. What a gift! What an utterly improbable, precious gift." Daisuke felt tears gathering. "I'll miss you when you're gone." "I'll miss me too," Hakuin said with a laugh. "I've grown quite fond of this old body and this particular perspective on existence. But missing isn't the same as clinging. I can feel sad about losing something while also accepting that loss is part of the deal. Everything that arises passes away. Everything. No exceptions. Will you tell me when it's very close? When you sense the end approaching? If I'm conscious enough to know, yes. I'd like to have people with me. Not because I'm afraid to die alone, but because dying consciously, with presence, surrounded by this community, that feels like a fitting way to complete this life." Over the following weeks, Hakuin continued his gradual decline. He spent more time resting, less time working. He sat often in the cemetery he'd tended for 50 years, surrounded by the markers of monks who'd gone before him, soon to join them. And there was something beautiful in watching him meet his approaching death with such grace, such acceptance, such willingness to let this life be complete. The monks rallied around him, visiting often, bringing tea, sharing stories, sitting in companionable silence. Nansen came daily, two old men who'd practiced together for decades, now navigating this final transition. One evening, Nansen and Hakuin were sitting together watching the sunset when Hakuin said, "Do you remember when I first arrived here? I was 22, arrogant, convinced I would achieve enlightenment within a year and then leave to become a famous teacher." Nansen laughed. "I remember. You challenged me in your first week, insisted I wasn't teaching real Zen, that you'd already learned everything I could offer. And you just smiled and assigned me to maintain the cemetery. I was furious. I thought it was punishment for my arrogance, a way to humble me. It wasn't punishment. I could see you needed to slow down, to develop patience, to learn that wisdom comes from presence rather than achievement. The cemetery seemed like a good classroom for those lessons. It was. Took me years to understand that, but it was. All those hours pulling weeds, planting flowers, caring for the resting places of monks I'd never known. It taught me things no amount of meditation or study could have taught. It taught me about cycles, about continuity, about being part of something larger than myself. And now you'll join them. Your name will be on a marker, and some young monk will maintain your resting place, perhaps learning the same lessons you learned. Yes, the cycle continues. I'm part of an endless lineage, the monks who came before me, the monks practicing now, the monks who will come in centuries after I'm gone. All of us part of this great river of practice, each contributing our small part, each learning what we need to learn, each passing it forward. Hakuin's breath caught slightly, a moment of pain crossing his face. Nansen noticed immediately. Should I call for help? No, it's just the body reminding me it's struggling. I'm all right. He breathed through the discomfort, meeting it with presence rather than resistance, demonstrating even now the teachings he'd embodied for 50 years. When the pain passed, he continued, You know what I'm most grateful for? Not the years of practice, though those were valuable. Not the insights or understandings, though those came. I'm most grateful for the ordinary moments, the thousands of cups of tea shared with friends, the spring mornings in the garden, the sound of rain on the roof, the feeling of tired muscles after a day's work, the simple fact of being alive and aware and part of this mysterious existence. That's the teaching right there, Nansen said softly. Not some transcendent wisdom about the nature of reality, but the simple recognition that this, exactly this, is enough, is everything, is what we've been seeking all along. I wonder, Hakuin mused, what it would have been like if I'd understood that from the beginning. If I'd arrived here at 22, already knowing that the point wasn't to achieve enlightenment, but to be present with life exactly as it unfolds. Would I have lived differently? You would have. And your path wouldn't have been yours. You needed to exhaust yourself seeking before you could discover the futility of seeking. You needed to try to achieve enlightenment before you could realize you were already enlightened and had only been obscuring that recognition through your trying. Your journey was perfect for you, exactly what you needed to learn, what you came here to learn. I suppose you're right, and really, I have no regrets. This life, with all its struggles and insights and ordinary moments, it's been enough, more than enough. It's been a gift beyond measure. The sun slipped below the mountains, painting the sky in colors that had no names. Stars began appearing, one by one. The same stars that had witnessed countless sunsets at this temple, that would witness countless more long after everyone currently alive had died and been forgotten. 3 days later, Hakuin gathered the community together. He was very weak now, confined to his bed, but his mind was clear, and he wanted to say goodbye. The monks assembled in his room, sitting on the floor around his bed. 40 people who'd known and loved this gentle man who'd spent half a century pulling weeds and planting flowers and teaching through his quiet example. Thank you all for coming, Hakuin said, his voice thin but steady. I wanted to see you once more before I go. Wanted to say how much this community has meant to me, how much each of you has contributed to my life and practice. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as he could. I'm not going to give a final teaching or offer some profound wisdom. Everything worth saying, I've already said through how I've lived. The only thing I want to remind you is this: don't wait. Don't postpone your full engagement with life until you've achieved something or become someone or figured everything out. Live now, be present now, love now. This moment is all you ever have. Tears flowed freely around the room, not tears of devastation, but tears of love, of gratitude, of witnessing someone complete their life with such grace. I'm ready, Hakuin continued, ready to see what comes next. Ready to release this body and this personality and this particular perspective. ready to dissolve back into whatever I came from, trusting that the same mystery that brought me into existence will receive me when I depart. He closed his eyes, focusing on his breath, which was becoming more labored. The monks began chanting softly, ancient words meant to support someone in transition, to remind them of their true nature, to ease the passage from this form of existence to whatever came next. Nansen sat beside the bed, holding Hakuin's hand, two old friends completing a journey they'd walked together for so long. "You've done well, my brother," he whispered. "You've lived fully, practiced sincerely, loved deeply. Let go now, release your hold on this life, see what waits beyond the gate." Hakuin's breathing slowed, became irregular, paused for long moments between breaths. His face relaxed, the lines of age and pain smoothing into something that looked almost like contentment. And then, on an exhale, he simply stopped. The breath went out and didn't return. The body became still. Whatever Hakuin had essentially been had departed, leaving only the physical form he'd inhabited for 73 years. The chanting continued for another hour, the monks honoring their friend, supporting his transition, creating a container of presence and love for this sacred moment of death. When they finally fell silent, Nansen stood and addressed the community. "Our brother has completed his journey with us. He lived as he practiced, with presence, with acceptance, with gratitude for the simple gift of existence. Let his death teach us what his life taught us, that every moment is precious, that resistance creates suffering, that peace comes from accepting what is, rather than demanding life be different. Tomorrow we will prepare his body for cremation. Tonight we sit vigil, keeping him company one last time, honoring the friendship and teaching he offered us, reflecting on impermanence and the preciousness of this brief time we have together." The monks took turns sitting with Hakuin's body through the night, each spending an hour in quiet contemplation beside their departed friend. When Daisuke's turn came, he sat cross-legged beside the bed, looking at Hakuin's peaceful face, marveling at how quickly life could leave, how thin the boundary was between being and not being. "Thank you," he whispered to the still form. "You taught me more than you probably realized. The way you found contentment in simple tasks. The way you never seemed to be rushing towards some future moment. The way you faced death without fear or resistance. You showed me what it looks like to actually live the teachings instead of just studying them." He sat in silence, feeling the weight of mortality, the reality that he too would one day lie like this. His breath stopped. His consciousness departed to wherever consciousness goes. Not morbidly, but clearly. This was the truth of existence. Everything born eventually dies. Everything formed eventually dissolves. No exceptions. And recognizing this didn't fill him with despair. Instead, it filled him with urgency. Not the frantic urgency of someone running out of time, but the clear urgency of someone who understands that now is all we ever have. Don't waste it being somewhere else. Don't postpone presence until conditions are perfect. Be here fully, because here is where life actually happens. The cremation ceremony was held 2 days later. Hakuin's body was placed on a simple wooden pyre in the temple's cremation grounds, the same place where countless monks had been cremated over 3 centuries. The entire community gathered, along with lay people from nearby villages who'd known and loved Hakuin. Nansen offered a brief eulogy. "Hakuin came to us 50 years ago as a young man full of seeking and striving. He left us as an old man full of presence and peace. The journey between those 2 points, that's what we call practice. That's what we're all engaged in here. Learning to let go of seeking and rest in being. Learning to meet life with acceptance instead of resistance. Learning to find the extraordinary in the ordinary." Hakuin discovered that wisdom doesn't come from achieving some special state. It comes from being fully present with ordinary experience. For 50 years, he maintained this cemetery, tending the resting places of monks who died long before he arrived. Simple work, repetitive work, some might say insignificant work. But he brought such presence to it, such care, such attention, that it became his practice, his meditation, his way of expressing enlightenment. Now he joins those he tended for so long. His body will become ash, will return to earth, will nourish the soil that grows the flowers will plant at his resting place. And the cycle continues, life and death, form and emptiness, arising and passing away. The eternal dance that none of us can escape, but all of us can learn to participate in with grace. The pyre was lit. The flames grew, consuming the body that had carried Hakuin through 73 years of existence. The monks chanted, their voices rising with the smoke, carrying prayers and blessings, honoring the transition from this life to whatever came next. Ayame stood watching, tears streaming down her face. She'd known Hakuin only briefly, but his death affected her deeply, partly because she'd grown fond of him, but also because it confronted her with her own mortality, her own finite time, her own eventual dissolution. She felt Daisuke beside her and turned to him. "How do we do it?" she asked. "How do we live knowing we're going to die? How do we care about anything when it's all so temporary?" "We care precisely because it's temporary," Daisuke replied quietly. "If we had infinite time, nothing would be precious. It's the fact that this ends, that we have limited days and hours and breaths, that makes each moment valuable." Hakuin understood that, especially at the end. That's why he could be so present, so grateful, so fully engaged with simple things. He knew they wouldn't last. "It feels unbearable, the thought of everyone I love eventually dying, of me eventually dying, of all of this." She gestured at the temple, the mountains, the whole beautiful scene, eventually gone. "It is unbearable when we resist it, when we demand that things be permanent, that love last forever, that nothing ever change or end. But when we accept impermanence, when we stop fighting with the basic nature of existence, something shifts. We can love fully precisely because it won't last forever. We can appreciate deeply precisely because it's temporary. We can be present completely precisely because this moment will never come again." The fire burned down eventually, leaving only ash and fragments of bone. These would be gathered and placed in a small urn, which would be buried in the cemetery beneath a simple marker bearing Hakuin's name and the dates of his birth and death. Future monks would tend his resting place, perhaps learning the same lessons he'd learned, perhaps discovering their own unique insights. Life at the temple continued. The absence of Hakuin was felt keenly for weeks, then gradually became part of the new normal. His duties were redistributed among other monks. Someone else maintained the cemetery now, though everyone agreed no one did it quite the way Hakuin had, with that particular quality of loving attention he'd brought to every task. Ayame found herself changed by witnessing Hakuin's death. Something in her had softened. Some of the driven quality had eased. She still struggled with her tendency to push too hard, to measure herself against impossible standards. But she caught herself more quickly now. And when she caught herself, she remembered Hakuin's gentle presence, his contentment with simple things, his acceptance of life exactly as it was. One afternoon, she was assigned to work in the cemetery. As she pulled weeds and planted flowers at the various grave sites, including Hakuin's fresh one, she found herself talking to him. "I'm trying to learn what you knew," she said to the earth that covered his ashes. "Trying to find peace with being exactly where I am, instead of constantly striving to be somewhere else. It's harder than it looks. My old patterns are so strong, but I'm practicing. I'm noticing when I'm in achievement mode and trying to return to being mode, like Daisuke taught me." The work was meditative, digging in soil, removing weeds, making space for beauty to grow. Her mind wandered sometimes, but she kept gently returning to the actual experience, the texture of earth, the smell of growing things, the warmth of sun on her back, the simple satisfaction of caring for this space. And in one of those returns, in one of those moments of presence, she glimpsed something. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or special experiences, just a quiet recognition that she was exactly where she needed to be. doing exactly what needed doing, and nothing was missing. The moment was complete. She was complete. Not perfect, not finished developing, but complete in the sense that her worth didn't depend on becoming someone other than who she was. The glimpse lasted only seconds before her mind rushed in with commentary. "This is it. This is what they're talking about. I need to remember this." And the moment vanished. But she'd tasted it. She knew now what presence felt like, what it meant to be fully here without the constant mental noise about being somewhere else. She smiled, recognizing the pattern. Of course, her mind had grabbed onto the experience, trying to possess it, to turn it into an achievement. That's what minds do. But she'd seen the mechanism clearly. And in that seeing, there was freedom. She didn't have to believe every thought, didn't have to follow every impulse, could notice the grabbing and gently release it. She continued working, and the glimpse didn't return. But that was okay. She understood now that she wasn't trying to maintain some special state. She was learning to recognize what was always available beneath the mental noise. And each time she recognized it, even briefly, the recognition became more familiar, more accessible. That evening, she sought out Daisuke to share her experience. She found him in the meditation hall, sitting alone after the formal practice had ended. "May I join you?" she asked. He nodded, and she settled onto a cushion nearby. "I had an experience today," she began, then paused. "No, that's not quite right. I had a moment of recognition, a glimpse of what you and Master Nansen have been pointing at. Tell me about it." She described working in the cemetery, the gradual quieting of her mind, the sudden recognition of completeness. It only lasted a few seconds before my mind grabbed it. But it showed me something important. Showed me that what I've been seeking isn't somewhere else. It's right here, available in any moment of actual presence. Daisuke smiled. "Yes, that's exactly it. And now you understand why I was told to forget my experience sweeping snow. Not because it wasn't valuable, but because clinging to it prevents new moments of recognition from arising. The point isn't to recapture some special experience. It's to keep returning to presence, over and over, until presence becomes more familiar than absence." How long does that take? The rest of your life. There's no end point where you've finally mastered presence and never wander again. There's just this ongoing practice of noticing when you've wandered and returning. Some days that's easy, some days it's hard, some days you forget for hours or weeks. And all of that is fine. All of that is part of the practice. They sat together in comfortable silence. Through the window, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. The temple bell rang, marking the hour. Everything continuing its ancient rhythm, caring nothing for human struggles toward awakening, simply being what it was. "Daisuke, can I ask you something?" Ayame said after a while. "When you teach me, when you point at these truths, how do you know if I'm actually understanding or just grasping the concepts intellectually?" "I listen, not just to your words, but to the quality beneath your words. When someone understands experientially, there's a different feel to how they speak, less grasping, less urgency, more settledness. They're not trying to prove they understand. They're simply sharing what they've seen. And you heard that in me today. I heard something shifting, not complete understanding, that comes gradually over years, but a genuine glimpse, a real recognition. And that's valuable. That glimpse will inform your practice going forward. It'll give you something to return to, not as a memory to cling to, but as a recognition of what's possible, what's always available. I'm grateful for your patience with my struggles, for not giving up on me when I was pushing so hard and making myself miserable. I couldn't give up on you. I saw too much of my younger self in your struggling. I knew you needed to exhaust yourself seeking before you could discover the futility of seeking, just like I did, just like most of us do." Ayame stood, bowing deeply. "Thank you. I'm going to sit with this. Not try to figure it out or hold on to it. Just let it settle into me." After she left, Daisuke remained in the hall, reflecting on the strange journey of becoming a teacher. When he'd first arrived at this temple years ago, he'd never imagined he would end up in this role. He'd been too caught up in his own seeking, too focused on his own struggles, but life had unfolded in unexpected ways, and now, here he was, helping others navigate the same territory he'd struggled through. He thought about Hakuin, who taught primarily through example rather than words, who'd shown what it looked like to live the teachings instead of just talking about them. And he felt a renewed commitment to embodying the practice, to letting his life be the teaching, to demonstrating presence and acceptance and genuine engagement with whatever arose. The next morning brought news that would ripple through the temple community. Nansen had decided it was time to step down as master. At 72, he felt his energy waning, his capacity to hold the demanding responsibilities of leadership diminishing. He wanted to spend his remaining years in simpler practice, sitting more, teaching less formally, enjoying the quiet rhythms of monastic life without the constant demands of administration and guidance. He gathered the senior monks to discuss succession. The conversation was long and thoughtful, considering various candidates, weighing their strengths and readiness. Eventually, they reached consensus. The next master of the temple would be a woman named Keiko, who'd been practicing there for 25 years, who demonstrated deep wisdom and genuine compassion, who had the respect of the entire community. When Keiko was informed of the decision, she was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "I'm honored by your trust, but I must be honest. I don't feel ready. I don't feel wise enough, realized enough, capable enough for this responsibility." Nansen smiled. That's the first qualification. Anyone who feels completely ready for this role has probably misunderstood what it entails. The work will teach you what you need to know. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be genuine, present, and willing to serve. But there are monks here with more experience, more insight. Experience and insight matter. But what matters most is your capacity to meet people where they are, to listen deeply, to hold space for others' awakening without needing to prove your own. We've watched you for years. We've seen how you work with struggling students. We've seen your humility, your genuine kindness, your willingness to acknowledge your own uncertainties. Those qualities make you exactly right for this role. Keiko accepted, bowing deeply to the trust being placed in her. The formal transition would happen over the next few months, with Nansen gradually transferring responsibilities while remaining available for guidance and support. The news spread through the temple community quickly. Some monks were delighted. Keiko was well loved, respected for her warmth and wisdom. Others were uncertain, wondering what changes her leadership might bring. A few were resistant, preferring the familiar patterns of Nansen's long tenure. Keiko navigated these varying responses with grace. She met individually with monks who had concerns, listening to their worries, acknowledging their feelings, promising to honor the temple's traditions while allowing necessary evolution. She was transparent about her own uncertainties, which paradoxically created more trust than if she'd projected complete confidence. One of her first acts was to ask Daisuke to take on more formal teaching responsibilities. She'd watched his development, seen how his early struggles had matured into genuine understanding, observed his natural gift for meeting students where they were. "I need teachers who remember what it's like to struggle," she told him, "who haven't forgotten their own confusion and doubt. You have that quality. You can speak to seekers from a place of genuine understanding because you've walked the path they're walking." Daisuke felt the same mixture of honor and inadequacy that Keiko had felt. "I'm still learning myself, still discovering new depths to the teachings, still making mistakes. Good. That makes you real. Students don't need teachers who pretend to be perfect. They need teachers who are genuine, who acknowledge their own ongoing process while still being able to point toward truth." And so Daisuke stepped more fully into teaching, offering regular talks, meeting with students individually, gradually discovering his own teaching voice. Less poetic than Nansen's, more direct, grounded in his own experiences of struggle and recognition. His first formal Dharma talk was attended by the entire community. He stood at the front of the meditation hall, looking out at 40 faces watching him expectantly, and felt his old anxiety rising. Who was he to teach these people? What did he have to offer that they didn't already know? But then he remembered something Nansen had told him. Don't teach from a place of knowing. Teach from a place of genuine exploration. Share what you've discovered, not as absolute truth, but as your experience. Let people take what resonates and leave what doesn't. He took a breath, settled into himself, and began. I want to talk today about the difference between seeking and finding. For years, I sought enlightenment. I meditated intensely, studied obsessively, tried every technique I encountered. I was convinced that if I just tried hard enough, practiced long enough, I would finally achieve the breakthrough I was seeking. He paused, making eye contact with several monks. But the harder I sought, the more elusive peace became, because seeking itself reinforced the belief that I wasn't there yet, that this moment wasn't it, that I needed to be somewhere other than where I was. The very act of seeking created the gap I was trying to close. Then one day, I was just sweeping snow, not trying to achieve anything, not measuring my spiritual progress, just sweeping. And for a brief moment, the seeker disappeared. There was just sweeping happening, presence happening, awareness happening, no one doing it, no gap between experiencer and experience, just this. That moment showed me that what I'd been seeking wasn't somewhere else, waiting to be found through years of effort. It was right here, available in any moment of genuine presence. The seeking itself had been preventing me from recognizing what was always already available. Ayame, sitting in the third row, felt tears gathering. This was exactly what she'd experienced in the cemetery. The recognition that what she sought was already here. Daisuke continued. So the practice isn't about seeking enlightenment. It's about recognizing what's already enlightened. This awareness, this presence, this simple fact of being conscious and alive. We don't need to become someone else. We need to recognize who we already are beneath all the stories and concepts in seeking. But here's the paradox. We can't not seek. Seeking is natural when we're suffering. So we seek until we exhaust ourselves seeking, until we finally give up and discover that what we were looking for was here all along. The seeking isn't wrong. It's part of the journey. But eventually, we learn to let it go, to rest in what is instead of striving for what might be. He spoke for another 30 minutes, sharing stories from his own practice, answering questions, pointing always toward the simple recognition of presence. And afterward, several monks approached to thank him, to share how his words had landed, to express appreciation for his honesty about his own struggles. Nansen, who'd been sitting in the back, smiled at him warmly. Well done. You spoke from the heart. That's all teaching really is, sharing your heart truth and trusting that it will touch others who need to hear it. As the months passed, the temple settled into its new rhythms under Keiko's leadership. She brought a slightly different flavor to the role than Nansen had, more collaborative, more willing to share decision-making, more focused on building community than individual achievement. Some adjustments were challenging, but most monks appreciated her approach. Ayame continued her practice, slowly learning to trust that she was enough as she was. Her tendency to push too hard didn't disappear, but she caught herself more quickly. And when she caught herself, she could smile at the pattern, recognize it as an old friend trying to help in the only way it knew how, and gently redirect her energy toward presence instead of achievement. One winter evening, she was sitting alone in the meditation hall when Keiko entered. The new master often made these informal rounds, checking in with monks, offering quiet support. "May I sit with you?" Keiko asked. "Of course, master." They sat together in the dimly lit hall. Outside, snow was falling again, blanketing the world in white silence. The only sound was their breathing and the occasional creak of the old building settling. After a long silence, Keiko spoke softly. "I've been watching your journey, Ayame. You remind me of myself when I was younger, so driven, so convinced that worth comes from achievement, so afraid of simply being ordinary. How did you change? How did you learn to let go of that? Slowly, over many years, through countless moments of recognizing the pattern and choosing differently, through failures and insights and the patient guidance of teachers who saw through my striving to the fear underneath it. What fear? The fear that if I stopped achieving, stopped proving myself, I would discover I was worthless, that my value came entirely from what I could do rather than from simply being alive. It's a common fear in our achievement-obsessed culture, but that doesn't make it less powerful. Ayame nodded, recognizing this fear intimately. And you overcame it. Not overcame, made friends with it. When the fear arises now, I recognize it. Oh, there's that old belief trying to protect me by pushing me to achieve. Thank you, but I don't need that protection anymore. The fear doesn't disappear entirely, but it has less power because I don't believe it anymore. I know experientially that my worth doesn't depend on achievement. How do you know that experientially, not just as a concept, but as a felt truth? Keiko considered this carefully. Through the practice of meeting myself with kindness in moments when I failed or fallen short. Through allowing myself to be seen in my imperfection and discovering I'm still loved, still valued, still belong. Through countless small experiences of being enough exactly as I am, even when I'm not performing or succeeding or being impressive. That sounds frightening. Allowing yourself to be seen when you're not at your best. It is frightening. Vulnerability always is, but it's also liberating. When you stop hiding your imperfections, when you let people see your struggles and confusions and doubts, you discover that connection deepens. People don't love us for our perfection. They love us for our humanity, our realness, our willingness to be authentically ourselves. Snow continued falling outside, each flake unique and temporary and perfect. The meditation hall held them both in its ancient embrace, this space where thousands of monks over centuries had sat seeking truth, struggling with themselves, gradually learning to come home. Ayame, let me tell you something about spiritual practice that took me years to understand. Practice isn't about transcending your humanity. It's about embracing it fully. It's about being genuinely, authentically, courageously human, with all the mess and beauty that entails. But the teachings speak of transcendence, of going beyond the small self. Yes, but that's often misunderstood. Transcending the small self doesn't mean becoming some disembodied awareness floating above human experience. It means recognizing that you're larger than your self-concept, that awareness itself is spacious enough to hold all human experience without being threatened by it. You can feel fear and know you're more than the fear. You can feel inadequate and know you're more than inadequacy. You can be fully human while also recognizing the awareness that witnesses your humanity. Keiko shifted positions slightly, settling more deeply into her seat. When I was your age, I thought spiritual practice meant getting rid of my difficult emotions, my insecurities, my human messiness. I wanted to become some idealized version of myself, always calm, always wise, always centered. But that's not liberation. That's just another prison, another way of rejecting who you actually are in favor of some fantasy of who you should be. So what is liberation? Liberation is accepting your humanity completely while recognizing you're not limited to it. It's being fully human and fully awake simultaneously. It's feeling fear without being consumed by it, feeling sadness without believing you're fundamentally broken, feeling desire without being enslaved by it. It's holding all of your experience in spacious awareness, allowing it to be what it is, neither clinging nor rejecting. Ayame sat with this, feeling something shift in her understanding. So I don't need to get rid of my anxiety or my tendency to push too hard. I just need to recognize that I'm larger than those patterns. Exactly. The patterns might gradually transform as you work with them consciously, or they might not. Either way, you can be free. Not free from difficult patterns, but free within them. Free to notice them without identifying with them. Free to choose different responses even when old impulses arise. Free to be human without making your humanity mean you're failing spiritually. They sat together until the evening bell rang, calling everyone to dinner. As they stood to leave, Keiko placed a hand on Ayame's shoulder. You're doing well, better than you realize. The fact that you're questioning these things, struggling with these issues, willing to look honestly at your patterns, that's the practice. That's what it means to wake up. Not achieving some perfect state, but being willing to see clearly, to be honest with yourself, to keep showing up even when it's difficult. That night, lying in her simple room, Ayame reflected on Keiko's words. She thought about all the years she'd spent trying to be someone other than who she was. The constant striving, the endless self-improvement projects, the belief that she was never quite enough as she was. And she felt a deep tiredness with all of it. What if she just stopped? What if she allowed herself to be exactly who she was? Anxious sometimes, driven sometimes, uncertain sometimes, without making any of it mean she was failing. What if her worth really didn't depend on fixing herself or achieving some spiritual ideal? The thought was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it meant giving up a lifetime of conditioning, a whole identity built around achievement and self-improvement. Liberating because it suggested she could finally rest, could finally stop running, could finally just be. Sleep came slowly, consciousness dissolving into dreams where she was sweeping snow like Daisuke had, but the snow kept falling faster than she could sweep it, and eventually she just stopped trying and let the snow cover everything. And somehow that was okay. That was perfect. That was exactly what needed to happen. The winter passed into spring again, the cycle continuing its eternal rhythm. Snow melted, revealing brown earth that would soon green. Birds returned, filling mornings with song. The garden was prepared for another season of planting. And the monks, some who'd been there for decades, and some who'd arrived just recently, continued their practice. Sitting in meditation, working with their patterns, learning to be present with whatever arose. One warm afternoon in late spring, Professor Tanaka returned to the temple for another visit. It had been 2 years since his first stay, and Nansen was delighted to see him. "Welcome back, old friend," Nansen greeted him at the gate. "How has your practice been in the marketplace?" They walked together toward Nansen's quarters, falling easily into the companionship they'd developed. Tanaka noticed that Nansen moved more slowly now, leaned more heavily on his walking stick, seemed frailer than during their last meeting. "The practice continues," Tanaka said. "I still forget constantly, still get caught in thinking and worrying. But I return more quickly now. And I've noticed something interesting. My students seem to respond differently to me. Several have commented that I seem more present, more genuinely interested in them as people, rather than as vessels for knowledge I'm trying to pour into. That's the practice bearing fruit. When you're more present with yourself, you're naturally more present with others. When you stop living entirely in your head, you can actually see the people in front of you." They settled in Nansen's room, and the old master prepared tea with his characteristic care. Tanaka noticed the tremor in Nansen's hands, more pronounced than before. "Master, forgive me for asking, but are you well? You seem diminished since my last visit." Nansen smiled. "I'm old, my friend. 72 now. The body is wearing out. It's natural. I'm not fighting it, just noting it with interest. Everything that arises passes away, even this body that's served me well for 7 decades. Are you in pain? Sometimes joints ache, energy fails more quickly, but pain is just sensation. I don't add suffering to it by resisting or demanding it be different. It's just the body communicating its condition. I listen, I respond appropriately. I don't make it mean anything about my spiritual progress or lack thereof." They drank their tea in comfortable silence. Through the window, Cherry blossoms were scattering in a light breeze, pink petals drifting like snow. The beauty was almost painful in its transience. "I came to tell you something," Tanaka said eventually. "Something I've been wanting to share. The teaching you gave me that first day, letting the tea overflow to show me my cup was full, it changed my life. Not just my practice, but everything. My relationships, my work, my whole way of being in the world." "Tell me more." I realized that I'd been approaching everything the same way I approached that first meeting with you, full of my own ideas, my own assumptions, my own need to prove how much I knew. In conversations, I was so busy planning what I'd say next that I wasn't actually listening. In my teaching, I was so focused on transmitting information that I wasn't seeing my students. In my relationships, I was so caught in my own perspective that I couldn't really receive others. And that's changed. It's changing. I catch myself more often now. "Oh, I'm not really listening. I'm just waiting to talk. Oh, I'm treating this person as an object rather than seeing them as a subject. Another consciousness deserving of the same presence I want to be met with." It's humbling, seeing how unconscious I've been for most of my life. But it's also exciting, discovering how much richer life becomes when I'm actually here for it. Nansen nodded approvingly. "That's wisdom. Real wisdom that comes from practice, not from books. You've emptied your cup enough to receive what's actually here instead of what you think should be here. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You owe me nothing." I pointed at the moon. You looked where I was pointing instead of staring at my finger. That's all teaching is, pointing. The seeing is yours. The transformation is yours. I just asked a question and got out of the way. They talked for another hour, sharing news and insights, enjoying the simple pleasure of friendship. When Tanaka finally stood to leave, Nansen remained seated. "I'm glad you came, my friend. I don't know how many more visits we'll have. This old body won't last forever, but know that meeting you, watching your transformation, being part of your journey, it's been a joy, a genuine gift." Tanaka felt tears gathering. "Master, please don't speak of dying. You still have years of teaching ahead of you. Perhaps, perhaps not. Either way, I'm at peace with it. I've lived fully, taught what I could, loved deeply. What more could I ask for?" They embraced, two men who'd become genuine friends despite the traditional teacher-student relationship. Two souls who'd recognized each other across the apparent boundaries of age and role and background. After Tanaka left, Nansen sat alone in his room, feeling the weight of his years, feeling also a deep contentment. He'd lived a good life, not perfect. He'd made mistakes, said things he regretted, sometimes failed to meet students where they were, but he'd been sincere. He'd practiced genuinely. He'd offered what he could from an honest heart, and that was enough. The summer unfolded slowly at the temple. Hot days made meditation challenging, sweat dripping despite the early morning hour. The garden flourished, producing abundant vegetables that kept the kitchen busy with preserving and pickling. Monks rotated through various duties, learning to bring presence to cooking and cleaning and maintenance, discovering that enlightenment wasn't somewhere else, but right here in the ordinary activities of daily life. Daisuke continued developing as a teacher, finding his own voice, learning when to speak and when to remain silent. He worked regularly with Ayami, watching her gradual transformation from driven achiever to someone more settled in herself. The change wasn't dramatic or sudden, but it was real. She smiled more easily now, pushed herself less harshly, could acknowledge her struggles without making them mean she was failing. One evening, she came to him with a question. "I've been practicing here for almost 2 years now, and I'm different than when I arrived. Less anxious, less driven, more present. But I'm starting to wonder, what's next? Do I stay here forever? Go back to the world? What's the point of all this practice if I never apply it to anything beyond monastery life?" Good question. What draws you? What feels like the next natural step? I don't know. Part of me wants to stay here, to keep deepening my practice in this protected environment. but another part feels called to return to the world, to test whether what I've learned here can survive in the chaos of regular life, to see if I can maintain presence while working a job, dealing with difficult people, navigating all the challenges that drove me here in the first place. Both impulses are valid. There's no right answer. Some people need to stay in monastic settings to maintain their practice. Others find that monasteries become an escape, that they need the friction of ordinary life to truly develop. How do I know which I am? Daisuke smiled. You listen, not to your fears. They'll always advocate for the safest option, and not to your ambitions. They'll always push for the most impressive option. You listen to something deeper, to what genuinely calls you, beyond fear and ambition, to what feels true even if it's not comfortable. Ayame sat with this, turning inward, trying to sense what was actually true for her beneath all the competing voices. After a long silence, she spoke. I think I need to go back. Not forever necessarily, but for now. I need to see if I can bring this practice into the messiness of ordinary life. Need to test whether the peace I've found here is real, or just a product of the protected environment. When will you leave? I'm not sure. Maybe in a few months, after I've had time to prepare, to say proper goodbyes, to stabilize this intention. Then let's use these remaining months well. Let's deepen your practice so you have a strong foundation to draw on when life gets challenging. Because it will get challenging. The marketplace will test you in ways the monastery never has. Over the following weeks, Daisuke worked intensively with Ayame, teaching her practices for maintaining presence in the midst of distraction, for working with difficult emotions, for recognizing when she'd slipped into old patterns. They discussed how to create a daily practice that would fit into a working life, how to bring meditation into everyday activities, how to find sangha, spiritual community, even outside formal religious settings. Meanwhile, Nansen's health continued to decline. He taught less frequently now, spent more time resting, moved with increasing difficulty. Keiko consulted with him regularly, seeking his guidance as she navigated her new role, grateful for his wisdom and support. One afternoon, Nansen asked to speak with the entire community. Everyone gathered in the main hall, sensing something significant in the request. When they were assembled, Nansen addressed them from his seat at the front. Thank you all for coming. I've been teaching here for 42 years. It's been the great joy of my life, watching students arrive and grow and discover their own true nature. But the time has come for me to step back completely. This body is failing, and I need to devote what energy remains to preparing for death rather than teaching. A collective intake of breath moved through the room. Though everyone knew Nansen was aging, hearing him speak so directly about approaching death still shocked them. Please don't be sad, he continued gently. Death is as natural as birth. Everything that comes into being eventually passes away. I've lived fully, practiced sincerely, loved deeply. I have no regrets. Now I want to complete this life consciously, with presence, showing through my death what I've tried to teach through my life, that we can meet even the most difficult transitions with acceptance and grace. Master Keiko will continue leading this community with wisdom and compassion. Trust her, support her. Remember that the teaching doesn't depend on any individual teacher. The truth we've been exploring together is available to everyone, transmitted not through special lineages, but through sincere practice and direct recognition. He paused, his breathing labored. I want to thank you all. Each of you has contributed to my life and practice. Each struggle you've shared has deepened my understanding. Each question you've asked has sharpened my seeing. Teaching you has taught me more than I ever taught you. That's the secret of teaching. It's always mutual, always a shared exploration of truth. Now go, practice well. Be kind to yourselves and each other. Remember that the point isn't to become perfect, but to become real, to be genuinely, courageously human. And when I die, don't make it into something more than it is. Just let me go. knowing I lived well and am completing this life satisfied." The monks sat in stunned silence. Finally, Daisuke spoke. "Master, is there anything we can do for you? Any way we can support you through this transition? Just be present. Visit when you feel moved to. Sit with me. Don't feel obligated to say profound things or offer comfort. Just be here in your genuine humanity. That's all any of us can offer each other, our authentic presence." Over the following weeks, monks took turns sitting with Nansen. Sometimes they talked, sharing memories or asking final questions. Sometimes they sat in silence, just being together. Nansen received each visitor with warmth, seemed genuinely interested in their lives and practices, offered guidance when asked, but mostly just listened. Professor Tanaka, hearing the news, immediately arranged to return to the temple. When he arrived, he found Nansen in bed, visibly weaker than during their meeting just months earlier. "Ah, my friend," Nansen greeted him with a faint smile. "You came. I'm glad. I wanted to see you once more." "Master, Tanaka's voice broke. He'd known this day would come, but he wasn't prepared for the reality of it. "It's okay to feel sad," Nansen said gently. "I'll miss you too. I've enjoyed our friendship, our conversations, watching your transformation from that professor with the overflowing cup to the present, genuine person sitting before me now. That's been a gift. You gave me my life back. You showed me how to actually live instead of just thinking about living. I showed you nothing you didn't already know. I just pointed at what was already there, waiting to be recognized. You did the real work, the returning, the practicing, the gradual shift from seeking to finding. That was all you." They sat together for hours, talking sometimes, silent sometimes, two friends completing a journey they'd walked together. Eventually, Tanaka had to leave to catch his train back to Tokyo. He stood, bowed deeply, and spoke through tears. "Thank you, Master, for everything, for your patience, your wisdom, your friendship. You changed my life, and you enriched mine. Now go, live fully, be present. That's all I ask. Don't make me into some perfect master you worship from a distance. Remember me as a flawed human being who practiced sincerely and shared what he discovered. Then let me go and continue your own practice." They embraced one final time. Then Tanaka left, walking down the mountain path with tears streaming, grief and gratitude mingling in his heart. 3 days later, on a quiet evening as summer rain fell gently on the temple roof, Nansen died. Keiko was with him, along with Daisuke and 2 other senior monks. His breathing had been growing more irregular throughout the day, long pauses between breaths. And then, on one exhale, he simply stopped. The breath went out and didn't return. His face relaxed into profound peace. Whatever Nansen had essentially been had departed, leaving only the worn-out body he'd inhabited for 72 years. The monks sat with him through the night, chanting softly, honoring his transition, keeping vigil one last time with their beloved teacher. And in the morning, they prepared his body for cremation with careful, loving attention, washing him, dressing him in his finest robes, placing him on the funeral pyre. The cremation ceremony drew hundreds of people, monks from other temples, students he'd taught over 4 decades, lay people whose lives he'd touched. Keiko offered the eulogy, speaking through tears about Nansen's extraordinary capacity to meet people exactly where they were, to point toward truth without demanding they see it his way, to embody the teachings through the simple quality of his presence. The fire burned, consuming the body, releasing smoke into the clear summer sky. And the assembled community bore witness, honoring a life well lived, a practice sincerely undertaken, a teacher who'd helped countless beings find their way home to themselves. As the smoke rose and disappeared, Ayami stood watching, tears flowing freely. She'd known Nansen only briefly, but his impact on her had been profound. He'd shown her what it looked like to be fully human, without adding extra suffering, to age and die with grace and acceptance, to complete a life satisfied. And she felt grateful for his life, for his teaching, for the example he'd provided of what was possible when you stopped fighting with what is and learned to meet life with presence and an open heart. The days after Nansen's death were quiet at the temple, everyone processing the loss in their own way. Some monks were devastated, having known him for decades. Others, like Ayame, felt sadness mixed with inspiration, grieving his absence while feeling motivated to live as he'd lived, to practice as he'd practiced, to meet their own eventual deaths with similar grace. A week after the cremation, as the community was slowly returning to normal rhythms, Ayame approached Keiko. "Master, I've decided. I'm going to leave next month, return to the world, find work, see if I can maintain this practice outside the monastery walls. Nansen's death has shown me something important, that we don't have unlimited time, that if I'm going to test my practice in the marketplace, I should do it now rather than waiting for some perfect moment that might never come." Keiko nodded approvingly. "That's wisdom, and know that you can always return if you need to. This place will be here. We'll be here. You're always part of this community, whether you're living here or not. Thank you, Master, for everything, for your guidance, for your patience with my struggles, for showing me that it's possible to be both a leader and genuinely humble." And so, as autumn approached once again, Ayame prepared to leave. She said her goodbyes, packed her few belongings, and stood one final time at the temple gate, looking back at the place that had transformed her life. Daisuke walked with her to the bottom of the mountain. As they prepared to part, he offered final words. "Remember, you're not leaving the practice behind, you're taking it with you. Every moment is an opportunity to be present. Every challenge is an opportunity to practice. Every breath is a return home. I'll remember, and I'll return someday to visit, to sit, to reconnect with what I've learned here." She walked away down the mountain path, and Daisuke watched until she disappeared around a bend. Then he turned back toward the temple, climbing slowly, feeling the familiar ache in his knees, grateful for the simple gift of walking, breathing, being alive on this beautiful autumn morning. And far away, in cities and towns and villages across the world, students who'd learned from Nansen continued their practice, carrying his teachings forward not as fixed doctrines, but as living wisdom, adapting and evolving, finding new ways to point at the same eternal truth. Be present, accept what is, meet life with an open heart. That's all. That's everything. That's the whole path, available in each moment, waiting to be recognized, as close as your next breath, as accessible as this simple awareness you've always been. May these teachings continue to unfold in you now as you drift into deep, restorative sleep. May you rest in the knowing that you are enough, exactly as you are. May you wake tomorrow with renewed presence, ready to meet life with acceptance and grace. And may you carry forward the wisdom of all who came before, that peace isn't achieved, but recognized, that home isn't reached, but remembered, that what you seek is what you already are. Sleep now. Rest deeply. Let go. You are home.